Hey, everybody, real fast. John Ray's going to go live here, and I'm going to stream it. And so I'm just going to sit back, and we're going to hear never heard evidence in the Go Beach homicide. So let's see what happens.
Just so you know, we're going to give you about another 5 minutes so that in case people are parking, St. John's, that you've experienced it. It's kind of hard to find your way around. So we'll wait 5 more minutes in case everybody else is coming, and we'll start. Okay.
Who are you, and what have you done with my daughter? They're trying to kill me. I was in Jersey City in court when I heard Shannan Gilbert's name and I saw her face, and I learned that she was missing out of Jersey City and last seen in Long Island. She was not yet found, and I knew that this was not the last time that I would hear of Shannan. Months later, I received a call from my former history teacher, who was my family's attorney, a protector, a fighter with great integrity, who was notorious for going toe-to-toe with the status quo, who gives the vulnerable a fighting chance. That call came from John Ray. He asked me to meet Mary Gilbert, a mother who lost a child, Shannan. Mary and I got to know each other very well. Her trust in John Ray, I understand. His reputation, pretty much everyone knows. Who are you and what have you done with my daughter? The unwavering, confrontational question a distraught mother asked of the stranger who identified himself as Dr. Peter Hackett. They're trying to kill me. The dreadful answer of a daughter, desperate for the help she was counting on from those with the power to provide it. These are the cries of a mother and a daughter that we have lived with for over 13 years. I am Frances Nicotra. I am a Jersey City lawyer. I am the co-administrator with Cherie Gilbert of the estate of Shannan Gilbert. Mary Gilbert was Shannan's previous administrator before she passed away. I helped her form Shannan's estate. The matter of Shannan Gilbert could have only survived via my forming the estate in Jersey City in court. I'm grateful that I was chosen by Mr. Ray to do this. With Mary's two daughters, Cherie and Stevie, we all continue with Mary's quest for the truth. We naturally expanded the scope of our work to include investigation of related matters. That is natural. With grace, resolve, and sacrifice, Cherie and Stevie support our cause, which was Mary's cause, with the gold standard hard work of John Ray. The arrest made thus far certainly did not ease our efforts, that's for sure. Eventually, Mr. Ray met up with a courageous woman who came forward to reveal her connection to one Rex Sherman and her fight to survive. I spent a lot of time with this person myself. You will hear her words today as to her survival at the hands of Rex Sherman. She succeeded in a fight for her life that Shannan could not possibly win. Shannan Gilbert is the real beacon of light. In death, she led us to the sad fate of other victims, and now she continues to lead to the truth through her spirit, her sisters, and her advocates. It is a far-gone conclusion. Shannan started this, and she will finish it. With that, I introduce Stevie Smith. She's Shannan Gilbert's sister.
being here today. My name is Stevie Smith. I'm the daughter of Mary Gilbert, and I am Shannan Maria Gilbert's younger sister. I am the younger sister out of all. I would like to thank Ms. Fran and Mr. Johnny Ray for organizing this. Thank you very much for all your hard work, your dedication, your hours, your knowledge. I appreciate everything that you've done for our family and for Shannan to get justice. Today, we are here to support Shannan Maria Gilbert. We would like her to be classified as her passing, not as undetermined, but as a homicide. Classified her passing as a homicide. Shannan deserves better. I deserve better. My family deserves better. Thank you. Shannan had goals. She had dreams. She was a beautiful artist, a singer. She was my sister, most importantly. And Shannan deserves better. Thank you.
With that, I also introduce Mr. John Ray.
Okay. I didn't think that you would recognize me without a hat. So I wore it, and it's game day. All right, so it's my game day. I just thought I'd make sure you knew who I was. Thank you. But on the more serious note, let me start with certain incidental observations for this lovely audience that we see here today. First, I thank Frances Nicotra, who you just heard. She's been my student since she was in 10th grade, and then she became a lawyer in Jersey City, which was perfect for this case because Shannan came from Jersey City, and we desperately needed Frances Nicotra procedurally to form the estate of Shannan Gilbert, and then after her mom died, Mary was the administrator of the estate. When Mary passed away, we needed to form the estate of Mary Gilbert, and Frances was instrumental in both of those. And just a quick story, we had only about, I think, a week or less during a hurricane to bring a lawsuit against Dr. Hackett in order to keep the case going. And it was Frances who got into the court in Jersey City, knew all the judges and the players, and got the estate formed in about 3 days, something like that, record time. We were able to get the service done during the hurricane. We served Dr. Hackett, and the case kept going. So Frances, and she's been my comrade in arms ever since. So I really thank her greatly. And the Gilbert family, as you know, they've had a struggle, very, very difficult life after poor Shannan passed. And they became very good friends of mine, all of them, and close with me, even to the point where when Sarah went mad from the loss of her sister, and you know what happened, I became Sarah's lawyer as well, because that's what Mary would have wanted, because she loves her daughter, and she died. She went to death helping her daughter, trying to help her daughter. So she would have asked me to do what I did. I thought, and they did it. I represented Sarah as well, and helped her through very hard times, and I even did the appeal, uh, for them because of my feelings for that family. And so Stevie is here, and she's wonderful. She's a very sensitive girl, and I don't think, you heard her speak publicly, but I don't think you understand completely the private thoughts she has and the pain she suffered because of the loss of her sister and her mother, all because of the Long Island serial killer. So I'm delighted to have her here, and she's really brave to come up here today and speak to you all. And I thank you for it, Stevie. Okay. I'd like to also thank all of you who've come, and it's hard to sometimes get your way into the city if you're from Long Island, so I appreciate that. And I thank St. John's. This is a great venue. We were originally scheduled to be at St. Francis, Molloy, sorry, at Molloy University in Acapulco Center, and we had it all set up to go in the fall, and at the last minute, they changed their minds and said they didn't want the press, they didn't want the publicity, and they thought our topic was too controversial. So we had to cancel and come here, and what a great choice it ended up being. It's my alma mater, by the way. I'm a graduate of St. John's Law School. So I'm very happy to be here in this great, famous old hallway that's still beautiful, and St. John's is a beautiful place to be, a little medieval-like city. And my daughter, who's here, Ruby, she's a first-year student here at the college, and doing well, and happy to be here. So we love St. John's, and we're glad to work out of this venue. I want to thank also my staff, Nani, and in technology, nobody's better. This guy is incredible, he's a genius. And his wife, Lena, who has done so much, has really advanced our cause. She's a researcher par excellence. And without the two of them, half of this or more of what I have to offer would not be available without their work. I want to also thank the rest of the staff, our manager, and my staff, which, in case you didn't know this, there are people who said, oh, you must have this big staff to do all this work. We're a tiny little firm from Long Island, and we're working to the max with every ounce of what we have to advance this cause. And my staff is a huge part of that, so I thank the manager especially. Thank you very much. Breaks. We're going to take a break after we finish a segment on the Shannan Gilbert and the other victims, and we'll take a short break, and then we'll move on to a whole new portion when I will reveal the surprise that I think I have, and then also we will hear from some new victims of Rex Hoyman who will speak about what has happened to them. We haven't heard from before, and we will have others who will speak through their affidavits that they've given us to come forward since October the 18th regarding Hoyman. These are things that have not yet been known. They haven't been revealed, and they will be now. So be patient. Remember, we're not treating this like a press conference. This is not a flash to make the 5 o'clock news. I've done enough of those in my lifetime. I know how they work. But instead, it's really a kind of a quasi-scholarly approach to the evidence that we've garnered over 12 years. I and my team, I and my firm. And we're going to put it forth for you today as a whole for the first time. So when we take our break, we'll keep it short because we have This is chock full of evidence, chock full of information and the inferences you can draw from the evidence. So I just, if you need water, that kind of thing, or refreshment, there is they have a Dunkin' Donut upstairs, and I think a Starbucks or something, but it's usually crowded, just so you know. So if you're gonna go there, get ready to stand on line. Just remind you to keep the ringers off if you can, on your phones. And practical things, this hallway and the work we had to do, and the security guards who were great, they've been really helpful here. That and all the other incidentals that come with organizing this has cost out of pocket over $8,000. And I just don't have that kind of money. I'm not a rich lawyer at all. And so I had to front that. But I have a not-for-profit organization called Magdalene Business Society that I formed some years ago, where I do work and have others who work with me for the people who have been, what I always say, they've been buried alive by society, by their society's institutions, and very often by the government itself. And where they never stood a chance, we try to help those people. And so that's what it's for. So the Magdalene Business Society is a not-for-profit. We do all the work for them for free. And it is that society which hired us all. So if you would think of that, I know I said it's free admission, and it is, but if you can find in your hearts to help us out, then you can contribute for GoFundMe. I think there's a little thing there you can see to do that with, and help us out, because we've raised about $3,000, so the rest is still is paid. But so if you can help out, I certainly would be very grateful. The Magdalene Business Society, just think about it. Magdalene, who was Magdalene? That was historically in the Bible. She's the one who stood at the foot of Christ's cross and who discovered the open grave on Easter. So she was originally reputed to have been, in biblical terms, a prostitute. And then Dismas was a good thief on the cross, who Christ promised would be the first one into heaven. So think about it. Two very unlikely characters in society, a prostitute and a thief, who are essentially, that's what this society is named for. So you get the message. You can use the Q&R code to get the bibliography, which contains a volume of the evidence that I'm talking about tonight, or this afternoon. By that I mean this: if I were to take you through the evidence that we've gathered over the years, and now try to present it to you with what we have, it would be impossible to do it in 8 hours. It would take more like 3 days, no exaggeration whatsoever. So if you use your Q&R code and you get the bibliography, that is to say the evidence, the supportive evidence, you'll see that everything I'm talking about, you'll find it there in the book. So I won't be showing you on the screen every document and so forth. It's just impossible. All right? We've done, we've organized this thing for the first time. We've never done anything like this before. So forgive me if we make a mistake or two with some of the slides, or I skip over something I shouldn't. But well, I hope it's not counted as amateur hour when you really see what I put together for you with my staff. I assume also, by the way, that I'm going to assume that you know the essential facts of the Long Island serial killer saga. If you don't, you're going to miss a few beats here, because I can't stop to like some of the TV shows do, and take you through from the beginning what happened as we go along. It's pointless. I'm assuming an informed crowd. And so I'm speaking to you in that regard, where I know that you know much of what I'm talking about already. Now, you can imagine the hours of work alone that we've done to put this forth today. And I say that this is kind of like what I'm doing here now and presenting to you is the first burning magma, the lava that comes out of the volcano that exists in this case. And that's all I'm going to be able to present to you today, is that first explosion of the volcano. But there is a volcano of truth, of fact, that has not yet been touched by the police, by the district attorney, by the task force, by anybody in this case. It's enormous. It spreads like a volcano's magma all over society. And one or two other personal notes, and I'll move on to my introduction. You will, I think, be able to judge today that those who have criticized the approach I've used over the years, where I turn to the public, I turn to the media, and say, here's what we have. And the police they don't like that, they criticize it. I've been condemned in the media, I've been condemned very often on the internet, where all these Monday morning quarterback shit type things that are sometimes nasty, because they say, well, you love the media, you love the attention and all the rest. Maybe so. But the truth is, the approach I use is to go to the media and say, give the facts we have found to the public. Let the public know, not just because the public is a judge, but mainly because the public is a source, maybe the best source of information and of evidence. And I've experienced that in many of the high-profile cases I've had over my lifetime. We generate witnesses, we generate evidence, we move the case forward in a way the police cannot. And that has proven to be true again and again and again. And you will see that or hear that today for sure. So you understand that, yes, I love the media. That's why. Because I have a cause, and that cause is advanced by this age-old traditional way, public exposure, bringing things to the light. And so that's what I'm doing now. I am not, after you hear all this, I'm not, and the people I work with are not anti-police. We are critical here today, as we have been through this case of the police work. But I'm not anti-police. I can't count the number, I've had 33 homicide cases over my lifetime so far, and I've had innumerable criminal cases. And I've had to cross-examine police officers and detectives and homicide detectives and the like, all my life, my adult life. And I can tell you this, I love and respect the police, and the homicide detectives especially. They are very peculiarly brave people. And I have seen some courageous acts by them, and even though I have to take them apart or try to on the witness stand, I have nothing but the highest regard for them. That's not the same thing as saying that in this case, the police did it right. They didn't. But this is not because I have some ideological cause or commitment to an ideal against the police, against society whatsoever. But in this case, there's a deep, deep, deep disruptive foul-up, and we're going to talk about that tonight. Proof of what I just said about not being anti-police, is there any better proof than that the commissioner of the Suffolk County Police Department, Rodney Harrison, held a press conference with me on October 18th and basically endorsed my work. So now I'm ready to introduce the first segment of this approach. You'll hear first about the case of Shannan Gilbert and the evidence we have, contrasted with the evidence that the police have come forward with, and the conclusions that they have drawn versus the conclusions we have drawn. And you'll hear new evidence you haven't heard before, and maybe you'll hear some that you have because you're knowledgeable. But we're putting it all together. That's the first segment. The second segment are some of the other victims and what they suffered and the police work that's been done on that, and some of the sex trafficking issues that we become involved in through this case and other cases. And then we'll take a break. And after that break, it's a short break because we got a lot to do. After that, I'm going to go into a very great surprise that I think will be very important. And I'm holding that until then for you to hear for the first time. When that is done, we will take questions and answers, period for that. And then we have other new, heretofore unknown victims of Rex Horrigan. Some of whom are here tonight, as I said before, and some of whom will appear by affidavit, and you will hear their affidavits, sworn statements of truth. And at least, well, all of them, but I mean, at least one of them, some very extraordinary fact that will, I think, quite surprise you as well. And that's the evening, as we planned it, okay? So let me introduce the first segment. And the first segment is actually going to be introduced by a non-invited guest speaker who is an old friend of mine, and he's a lawyer, a former prosecutor in Suffolk County, a man with a great record, as a criminal lawyer, now a defense lawyer for many years, a fellow who tried his first jury case against me many years ago, and he beat me, fair and square. And he's a good guy, and he's a great lawyer. And he's also the lawyer for Rex Horrigan. His name is Michael Brown. And Michael Brown is going to introduce us tonight.
Hackett Gilbert was a young lady who went to the same location, and it's obvious that she was in danger, that she was going to face death. And she luckily was able to make a phone call, and that's recorded. You folks have listened to that. Is there any doubt in your mind that Shannan Gilbert was the victim of a homicide? So that, because you didn't fit into the narrative, Shannan Gilbert was now labeled an accident. She fell, she drowned into a puddle of water. Does that make any sense?
Thank you, Michael. So you can see that Horrigan's lawyer agrees with me that Shannan was murdered. Well, let me start with how I came into this case. A bit of an overview. Back in 2011, there was a fellow named James Laffer who murdered 5 people in a Medford pharmacy. Many of you may remember the case. He assassinated them. He was a drug user. And he came and killed them. One of them, Jamie Tassetta, I was the lawyer for her family, and her family had to speak at the sentencing. So I stood in for 2 little girls who were her daughters and couldn't speak for themselves. And I spoke. I basically took on their personalities, and he was sentenced accordingly. Because of that, there was one of the news people, Steve Barcelo from the Daily News, approached me after the case and said, can you help this lady who's running into real trouble with the police? And her name is Mary Gilbert. Now, up until then, I had been following the case in the press, but lightly, it wasn't my case. So I went and I agreed to meet her to help out. And I did. We met in a bar in Iceland, and Mary, Steve, and I got to know Mary the first meeting, and I liked her, she liked me, and I said I could help her out. And it was a very simple thing I was going to do. She said the police had completely bungled the job, and she was upset. She just wanted me to give her some form of help, of support in some way. And we agreed that the only way we could do it would be to say, look, the cops have screwed up here, and I'll show you why in a second. And they've done so badly that we'll ask for the feds to come in instead, the federal government, and to get the United States Attorney's Office involved and essentially get the FBI in it instead of the Suffolk County Police Department. The reason that happened was because there were terrible things that Mary experienced while she was, while her daughter's case was being investigated. And I came into the case about, I think, a week after Shannan's remains had been found. And what Mary told me was pretty shocking. And there were things like this. The chief of, the commissioner of police, a fellow named Dormer, Gilbert had said in the investigation, he had said things like, Shannan Gilbert died by drowning. He made that announcement when Shannan had still not even been found. The police concluded she drowned. Now that meant one thing only, that they were listening to the people in North Beach who said, like the president of the North Beach Association. This is dying down a little bit, I think. Get it? A little bit more? How's that? More? Great. Okay. This meant that the cops were listening to the association, the Oak Beach Association, speakers like Gus Coletti, who was the president of the association, and said, oh no, she drowned. That's when she drowned. When you start to hear about who these people really were in that association, what they had to say, you can see it was a very illegal thing. And the police were buying the proclaim and saying, how could you say she drowned before they had even found the body? And that's one of the things that bothered her. There were other things too. Okay, how's that? I think it's too low now. All right, got it now? Okay. All right, thank you. They sent cadaver dogs in a famous picture that the Suffolk County Police published. Cadaver dogs that search for the dead into the marsh to look for Shannan. And the trouble with that picture was they had several dogs and they made it look great, the cops. But only one of those dogs was a cadaver dog. The other ones were all for show. So they were putting on a show, and it was fake. And Mary knew it. When every time they found the body, remember Shannan was the last one found, every time they found the body, they would call Mary up in Ellenville and tell her, we found your daughter, come on down. And of course, Mary would drive dutifully down, and then when she got there, they'd say, oh, sorry, I only kidding you. It wasn't your daughter. Now, they knew darn well, at all times when they did that Shannan had a metal plate in her face because she had her jaw broken in a fight with her boyfriend. So they could easily have known whether or not these other people found her or Shannan because they could just look at the plate. And that's eventually how they did identify Shannan. because of that plate. But Mary was becoming very disgusted with the treatment that she was receiving from the police in that regard. And then finally, when they did locate Shannan, after Mary had told them over and over that Peter Hackett, Dr. Hackett, should have been a suspect in the case because of the way he treated Mary, which we'll come to. They brought her in the rain in December when Shannan was discovered and brought her up on a deck on the roof of a house to show her where the body was located. It was Peter Hackett's house, former police surgeon of Suffolk County. It was his house that they insulted her with by bringing her up on the deck to look out into the marsh, to identify her daughter's place. That's how they treated this lady. So when you hear that people, they say, well, the cops, they treated everybody equally, just because there was a sex worker involved, they didn't care about that. They sure did. She was treated with insults. And, and eventually, Mary came to know that there was something really wrong with the investigation. And so that's why I came in. And my goal was to do only one thing, and that was to hold a press conference, which I was pretty good at by then, in Oak Beach, and call for federal intervention. That was it. That's all I was going to do. And then that was the end of it. That was going to be my representation. So we did that, and I held that conference, picture of which you already saw. And that was the end. I thought it was over. I said goodbye. Okay. But we know now that there was a chief of police who was in charge of that investigation at that time and for years afterward, whose name was James Burke. And James Burke deliberately shut down the police department's investigation. And if you don't believe that's true, we have the commissioner of police telling us that this was true.
Hart has a unique perspective on the investigation. When the Gilbert four were found, she was with the FBI. She told me without hesitation, the FBI was blocked from the case from 2012 to late 2015.
There was definitely an intentional decision made by both the district attorney at the time, Thomas Bowden, and the administration to keep the FBI out of the kind of part of the investigation.
Why was the decision made, to keep the FBI out of the investigation?
It's hard to know. My viewpoint is that any investigation benefits from having as many people at the table.
So there you have Commissioner Hart telling you what I just did. No better source of evidence than that. If she knew that investigation was interfered with by Burke and District Attorney Spoda, what did you expect Mary Gilbert to think, and what did you expect me to think, and the rest of the people in Suffolk County once we knew what was true? Something was very seriously, deliberately wrong with this whole investigation. And keep in mind that the commissioner of police not only says that, but she doesn't say it lightly. She's a very conservative woman. And also keep in mind that it's Burke who controlled that investigation even before he became chief of police, when he was the chief of the detectives for the district attorney's office. He was the de facto leader of that investigation. And he corrupted that investigation. And remember, he was responsible for appointing the detectives and the people who were conducting that investigation. He was responsible for their behavior, for their thoughts, and for who he chose. So does that cause you to have any surprise whatsoever that all kinds of people, like the victims of Florida and even now, are afraid to report to the Suffolk County Police Department anything? Because the corruption like a fish rots from the head, they said, the corruption went all the way down through the police force. Well, I called for the investigation by the feds. I wrote a letter to the feds, and this is the response I got. No response whatsoever from the federal U.S. Attorney's Office, but I did get a letter that you see there from the police union's secretary-treasurer, Vincent Steffen, who was a homicide detective working on the Gilbert Beach case. And you can see it's early January 2012. It's a 2-page letter in which he says various things about the investigation. What's wrong here with Steffen's letter? Steffen's letter, if you look at it and read it carefully in your package of bibliography, you'll see that he said things to me that a detective in an ongoing active investigation never should have talked about at all. And that is, he said what was on the 23-minute call by Shannan Gilbert to 911. He told us what he said was on that tape. He's not supposed to do that. And you'll notice something else. He wrote it on detective stationery from a union rather than on police department stationery. Does a detective go outside of his rank and do that by himself? Not unless he had tacit approval of the one who really controlled the Detective Association, and that was Chief James Burke. So that narrative that you see there became the narrative of the police force. And listen to some of the things that they said. All right? Take a look at that letter. They said things like, oh, and remember, he's writing for them. You were all wet, Mr. Ray, in your letter. Nobody was excited. Nobody at all was about to be murdered. Shannan Gilbert's demeanor was at all times calm. The male voices that you hear on the tape were calm. At no time was Shannan Gilbert desperate. She never spoke as if she was in danger. She was led into Gus Coletti's house, but she ran into the weeds when he called the police, and she disappeared. That's how he described what was on that 911 call, Steffen's letter. Now, I had no way of knowing whether that was true or not, but to make it clear that what was really going on, the detectives or the police department, you don't know who, sent that letter to Newsday and made it a feature story with a picture of Mary Gilbert and Cherie weeping openly over the death of Shannan. And they published that picture with the same letter. That was sent in by the police department. And now that you all have heard the tape, and I'm going to only play certain parts of it because of time, but all of you have heard of it, or heard it, know very well that those were not judgment calls where reasonable people can disagree. Those were not just procedural mistakes. Those were falsehoods, outright substantial falsehoods. Those things that I just read off to you from that letter. And that's the narrative that they have spun to the people and have done so ever since, right up until now. And that's one of the reasons we're here today. to expose this. They are lying about what happened, because you know very well that Shannan Gilbert's demeanor was not calm, that she did talk about being about to be murdered over and over, that she did speak and say she was in grave danger, and that the people talking to her on that tape were themselves loud and raucous, and there was violence. And how could they then write this letter and keep this story going all those years? She also, you'll see that she was never let into Coletti's house. That's a falsehood. And she never ran into any reeds. That's another falsehood. Why are they spinning the falsehood? Well, Mary was being bullied, something was wrong, and I get this letter, and now, instead of just saying that's the end of it, I get ticked off. I'm not going to let this happen to this woman. I'm not going to let them bully her, push her around, and something bothered me deeply about this letter, that it came the way it did and the way it gets published. Something's wrong. So I stay in the case. I stayed in the case until the springtime of 2012, when the medical examiner completes the medical report, the autopsy report, and calls a meeting of the family, who you see there with me, and the sisters and Mary, and we go collectively to the MD's office. At the medical examiner's office, it's a standard civil procedure, and the medical examiner is a civil body, separate from the police. It's an independent body, supposedly. When you listen to Lieutenant Kevin Byler, who is the chief of detectives for the Suffolk County Police Department presently, and he talks about what he sees on the tape and hears, you're going to hear something very interesting. Listen carefully to these things. You're going to hear him say repeatedly, he refers to the medical examiner as our examiner, under the complete thumb and thrall of the police. That's not the way it's supposed to work. He doesn't even realize he's making these slips with the tongue. Why is that important? Because when we arrive at the medical examiner's office for a civil meeting to just discuss the cause and manner of Shannan's death, there are sitting in that room 3 homicide detectives. I've never seen it before or since, with their arms folded in a very hostile manner, silently sitting as we asked what happened here. And every time I didn't know enough about the case to ask all the right and good questions. It was brand new. And every time I asked a question that had any poignancy to it whatsoever, not even realizing it, the assistant medical examiner, a brand new medical examiner, wet behind the ears, got up out of her chair, would walk over to the detectives and whisper she'd come back and answer the question. I've never heard that. Is that the way it's supposed to work? But that's what happened. But there's one thing she couldn't do, and that was to avoid the question that I asked. I said, what was on the tape? What did you hear on the tape? And of course, she had refused to answer or answer. So she answered. And what she told us was on the tape turned out to be really what was on the tape. So now we knew something was really wrong in this investigation. She also told us that Shannan had been wearing a jacket. We all know that now from the evidence that was true. But the jacket disappeared. The police took the jacket. They found it in the driveway of Joe Brewer and John's house. And when we went to the ME's meeting, she told us that the police had misplaced the jacket. It was gone. This is all under Chief Burke, the sexual pervert. Right? There was also, one thing I wasn't aware of was to look when there's a strangulation for the hyoid bone in the throat, a small U-shaped bone with horns on it. And if a woman is strangled, in virtually every case, the hyoid bone fractures, it breaks. You know, you squeeze it this way, the horns break. It becomes fractured. So I looked at the report, and there was a teeny tiny picture of the bones, and one of the bones was the hyoid, and it said in the report that there was an indent in the hyoid bone. And it never mentioned the missing broken horns at that portion of the report. They wanted. So I asked the ME, what is this indent? She said, oh, it might have been a growth in Shannan's throat that put an indent in the bone. Okay? And what happened to the horns? Oh, animals might have taken them away. Might have. Well, that was their explanation. She also told me that she was directed to destroy all of her notes. She had a single typewritten space, 3 or 4 pages of notes. She was told to destroy the notes, and she was going to destroy them immediately after the meeting. So you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. And we've never seen those notes to this day. I don't believe they exist. So before I went further from there and walked into marsh, I have other things to point out to you. But that's just the starters. You get the flavor of what we're in, and you see why. It's remarkable, isn't it? By the way, the hyoid bone, we'll see a picture of it later, did not have an indent. That was not accurate. It had a hole, 3/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch, round hole, right through the center of the base bone. It's a U-shaped bone, right through the base of the U to the other side, as if someone had either drilled, punctured it, shot an arrow through it. By the way, arrows come in size of 3/16 of an inch. somehow there was an unnatural thing in the hyoid bone. And nobody ever explained it. In any event, that's what happened at this medical examiner's meeting. The next thing we do is I decided better see if the police got the story right and did they walk the marsh. But before I get to that, how did the events of May 1st, 2010 unfold, the day that Shannan went missing? Let's talk a little bit about that. Here we have Shannan. You see what a beautiful lady she was. That's what we're talking about. We also have involved that morning, in the early morning hours, the driver of Shannan, Michael Pack. And we have the John she was supposed to service that morning, Joseph Brewer, a lovely man. And that's his broken down, bedraggled house where all these events occurred. You'll notice a little table, and this is looking at it from the back. That's the rear yard. And you can't see where Shannan ran out. It's on the other side. You can see his fence there on the left side of the picture. But you'll see and hear that there are other voices on that tape. And they could have been, very well have been in that spot. Well, talking a little bit about Brewer and the arrangement that was made. Shannan supposedly went from Jersey City that afternoon to Manhattan and to meet up with Michael Pack, her driver. But we know from Jersey City police records, the only police department that did an honest, legitimate job on this case, because Shannan was from Jersey City and they had a missing persons bureau run by a detective named Cesar Camacho. And he was a really not only an honest man, but a great detective. I met with him, had lunch with him, spent hours with him, and I know in intricate detail what he told me, and the notes that the Jersey City Police Department took, which are instructive about what really happened. And if I tend to ramble a little bit because I'm chock full of these facts, and they all kind of knit together. So forgive me for that a little bit anyway. Okay. As to how we know what happened in that arrangement, it was the Jersey City Police Department that garnered that information from a variety of sources, including Alex Diaz, Shannan's boyfriend, and others. Well, she goes from Jersey City and meets up with Michael Pack. But what we now know is that Michael Pack and Shannan both worked for a sex trafficking organization. So the night or the early morning hours that these arrangements were made and that she went because she worked for a sex trafficking organization through Craigslist and Backpage. Two notorious sites for sex workers and sex work. She was not a loner. She was not a freelancer. Michael Pack was a felon, convicted human trafficker from people in Asia. He went to federal prison before this. And now here he was working for an agency. They called them agencies. They're sex trafficking organizations. And we knew the names of those organizations back then when the police could have investigated them and never did. So this arrangement was made through an organization. And everybody knows the old adage, follow the money, right? Follow the money. So where's the money? When the initial contact occurs between Brewer and the organization, we have no idea what happened, what transpired. Nobody's ever said. Nobody's ever bothered to find out. When that transaction took place, surely Shannon and Pat would have known what the agreement was, what was supposed to happen that night. And we don't even really know whether and the police don't know, they never bothered to find out. We don't know when the actual arrangement was made. Was it made that night? Was it made earlier in the day or some other day? And the very short call that shows up on the records of Shannon Gilbert's phone between her and Brewer, which lasts, what, not even a minute, 2 minutes, couldn't have been the arrangement phone call. There is no record of the arrangement phone call. But most importantly, as you all try to follow the money, most importantly, there is no money paper trail. There is no money trail, period. Brewer denies that he made any arrangement for the money. I took his testimony again on October 18th of this year. I've taken his testimony now because of his resistance, I think 4 or 5 times. And never has there ever been an identification of the money, where the money went, how much money was involved, who was supposed to get it. No such thing. When Shannon's belongings are found in the marsh, there's money in her wallet, but nowhere near what you pay for 3 hours of service from a sex worker. So where is the money? What happened to the money? That's a big question. Pat denies that he knows of any money. He never got any money. He didn't know about the arrangements, all under oath. These truth tellers that the police found to be truthful, so they didn't go any further in investigating them. No money. How could that possibly be? Now, when you saw the picture of the trip from Manhattan to Oak Beach, you can follow either blue line. You go up to Cross Bronx, or you could go by way of the expressway, as you see there on the picture, about the same distance either way, and to Oak Beach. Do you think for 1 New York second that Michael Pack, driving his vehicle, at that time he claimed he was driving a Jeep, testified under oath, do you think he would have paid for the gas to go that way and for tolls if there were any that went the right way? Would he do that? And not know what he was getting paid and making sure he was getting paid in advance? If you know anything about sex workers, as I've come to know them very well, they don't, as a rule, go and service and then get paid. They want to get paid first. And when you're dealing with a sex organization, multiply that times 10. There's no way an organization is going to allow an arrangement without money. And yet, here we have an arrangement without any evidence of money whatsoever. Something's wrong with that picture. How can you follow the money when there supposedly isn't any? Because if you could follow the money, you would know, wouldn't you? The nature of the service she was supposed to provide. Was she going to do the standard 1 hour and make, say, $250, $300? Was she going to do 2 hours with a discount? Maybe make $400, $500? But she ended up doing 3 hours. 3 hours. It's extraordinary. And we don't know what service she was providing for 3 hours for one man. Do you think, in such circumstances, ordinarily, you can talk to the sex workers I've talked to, that 3 hours is an ordinary time? It's not. And the money better be up front. And they had to drive all the way to Oak Beach, in a place out in the middle of nowhere, from their perspective, in the middle of the night, after midnight, and take the chance that this guy would show up, that they never met before or talked with before, and take a chance that he wouldn't pay them when they got there? Does that sound right to you? You know it doesn't. You know something's wrong here. That money had to have been paid for something extraordinary. Was it a party that she was going to attend? Was it an unusual, one of these sexually perverted poker parties with cards? I mentioned that because you'll hear about playing cards in this case. Was it to engage in some unusual activity, like, say, being chased, being hunted? We don't know. But one thing that is pretty clear, it wasn't ordinary sex that was supposed to be involved. Just by the inference. But I digress, because the police didn't investigate that. They never found this out, an essential part of the story. And now it's way too late. Too many years have passed to trace this. So, with a driver like Pat, who, if you met Michael Pack, as I have several times, and interviewed him at length in a diner, and then interviewed him under oath twice. If you knew Michael Pack, you know one thing is true about Michael Pack. Every penny counts. He even wanted to know who was going to pay for the coffee, not him. He wanted me to pay for his gas to drive from Flushing to a diner in Queens to meet me. Yeah. This is a man who money is his mini god. And this same man was willing to drive and use up all that gas and effort at that time of the morning for a tryst of what? Wait, how much? $250? Of which he gets a cut of $50. None of that makes any sense.
Excuse me, John. Is ever a middleman involved that gets the money? Is there ever a middleman involved?
There should have been, and there probably was, but we don't know. Okay, whether there was a middleman. We just know what I told you. And I know as much as the police know, and more than the police know, because I've interviewed people they have refused to interview in that regard that I just explained. Right? Was she going for fun? When you hear her on the tape, the 911 call, she even says, was this for fun? I'm never going to enjoy it. I never do. I never did. You hear her say that. And what is she talking about? It is a really good chance she's talking about what she was hired to do, that she didn't want to do. It's possible she was talking about a drug, but we don't know. Anyway. They arrived at the booth. And that's the booth for the Oak Beach Association. You have to get through there. In that picture, you can't see it, but there's a gate. You can't get through, so Brewer had to come out and meet them at the gate. But if you look at the picture, there's 3 security cameras, 3. And they were in working order on that early morning day. So Brewer comes out and gets them and brings them back to his house, according to Brewer, and then Shannan goes in and Pack stays in his car. Now that's what, remember, everything that I'm telling you is what we know from here on until Shannan runs to Coletti. We know from Brewer's mouth and from Pack's mouth. And both of them have lied repeatedly about every detail in this case, under oath. So how can you even believe any of what I'm telling you to be certainly true? Certainly not the people who are supposed to be the most skeptical of all in evidence, the police department. Certainly not they, who ought to have believed Pack and believed Brewer on the face of what they said. So she goes back to the house, and that is all we know for the next few hours. A phone call is made to CBS around about 3 o'clock, according to the records we have, and we don't know what was supposed to be happening at CBS pharmacy that was allegedly open at that time in the morning, but the call was made. If you ask Brewer, he says he doesn't know why they were going there. If you ask Pat, he said, oh, they were going there to buy, Shannan wanted to buy playing cards, lotions, creams, and I forget what else, it was something else, but it wasn't important. Those two things are the important things. They were going to buy. Now, talk to any sex worker. They don't go to trysts without creams, without lotions, ointments. They don't. They bring it in their bag, and Pack testified that Shannan had her bag with her that morning. So there's no need to go to CVS or Merillac. Were they going there to cash a prescription? I subpoenaed the records, and I was denied. I don't think the police ever got the records from CVS as to what, if there were any drugs that they were trying to cash out that morning. Right. But playing cards, interesting. Why playing cards? What game was going to be played and with whom? Well, that call comes, and Shannan goes with Brewer, allegedly, according to Brewer and Pack. They go and they take a trip to CVS pharmacy. And they never go inside. Brewer testifies, I was just trying to make her happy, to make her go away, to go home. But the same Brewer also testified and told the public that he would not have sex with Shannan because she looked like a man. You saw Shannan in those pictures. Did she look like a man? And later on, he denied that he thought that. Something's really wrong with what happened here, isn't it? All right? And so, what happens after they go to CVS? Was she dropped off? Was she left somewhere? We have no idea whether she really went back or not, or where she went. But now we come to the struggle, because at some point she is inside that house, Brewer's house, once again. Brewer finally admitted, by the way, after he had told the public again and again, and he apparently told the police that he had no sex with her, he admitted under oath on my questioning that he did have sex with her. But he claimed it was only oral sex. But he admitted it. Now, when that happens, ask any sex worker, the tryst is over. Once the sex occurs, the tryst is over. You get your money and it's over. But 3 hours? Something's wrong with this picture. Were there other individuals involved in sex with Shannan? It's a very important question, isn't it? Right. Well, anyway, did Shannan get out of Brewer's car and go back in with Brewer after 3 o'clock, after 3 a.m.? Or did something else happen where she did not go inside? And when she makes the initial call that you hear on the 911 tape, is she calling because she ran inside the house? Did anybody ever consider that? To try to get to safety? And made the call once she got inside the house. Now the struggle.
Yeah, it was really afternoon. You're driving right now? I'm sorry?
Stop. There's somebody after me, repeatedly, very loud and clear. There's somebody after me. Would you say that if you were standing in the room in Brewer's home, with Brewer standing there, there's somebody after me, he's standing right there? That quote makes no sense as applied to Brewer. It has to be somebody else. Wouldn't be Pat, because she knows Pat. So who was after her? Sorry. Who was after her?
Could you be in the bathroom or another room?
There's a bathroom there, but she was in the main room according to both Pack and Brewer. So who was after her? Why would she say that and repeat it? Because she invented it, maybe. But also because somebody chased her in. Somebody is after me, and that's why she called. That's the first thing she said. She said it 5 times. Note her demeanor. Does that sound like a woman who's out of her mind? Does that sound like a woman who's hallucinating? As the police have said? Does that sound like a woman who's on drugs? Is she slurring her words, as they said?
Why am I doing this to you? Good word, don't catch me right now. Good word. Why are you talking about my name? No, stop it, please. Stop it, please. Please stop it. Please stop it.
Does that sound like somebody who's irrational? Making it all up? You can hear the physical assault that's taking place. He says, the guys, he speaks about guys. Guys? Hack and Brewer alone? With other people. I digress to one point. The police department played the tape for the public, and they played it separately in fragments for the press on May 13, 2022. For the first time, and only because Rodney Harrison met with me in my office once he got sworn in and said, we're releasing the tapes, and told the detectives who shook their heads in shock that he was going to do that. And they were opposed to it. And he did. The police tape that you're going to hear parts of is very poorly done. They did not bother to have the voices enhanced. We did. You're hearing our tape. We've done it twice. We've had 2 different enhancements, and we picked a better one of the 2. And you can hear much more clearly on this what she said than what you can hear what the police said. So they're operating with a poor tape. Why? Stop. We never did this before. The police department claimed, Byra claimed, Detective Byra, and the police department before him claimed that Shannan had done this frequently before from Pat. She had run out of his car crazed and angry Never once do you hear this girl being angry. You hear nothing but politeness. Are people hallucinating on drugs normally and act polite? You never hear anywhere that Shannan ran from anybody. And Pack himself testifies that the only time she ever ran away was because she wasn't paid. And you heard him just now say you've never done this before. So the idea that Shannan, this is a habitual thing of Shannan to freak out and hallucinate is a lie. Go ahead. Sorry.
Hello, you're being sarcastic about this. You were part of it all along.
You're part of this all along. She thinks the driver's in on it. Why would that surprise you if the driver's not working for her, he's working for the organization? And what is the thing that he's a part of? Something else is going on in this house. Something else is going on in this area that we don't know. But something else is happening that should have been investigated.
These people are trying to kill this. Where are you? What's your
These people are trying to kill me. These people. Just two people. When she says that, Brewer's not even there. So what people are we talking about? Brewer's allegedly upstairs. He had left.
hello?
Stop right there. You have to play it a few times yourself if you really want to listen to what you just read. But you hear her say, "They're going to kill me either my God or right now." It's one of the two phrases. So she has repeatedly said to the operator, someone's after me, they're going to kill me. And my God is going to happen right now. And that is a perfectly rational statement that she makes when she flees accordingly right after she makes that statement. And indeed, if she was in danger, right, if she wasn't completely hallucinatory, if she was in danger, doesn't she have here a Sophie's choice? Stay inside and take the risk somebody's coming in to kill her or is already there about to do so, or run and run into the people that are after her outside. Someone is after me. She makes the rational call. She runs. That makes more sense. So this girl is making sense all along. The police have completely misspun the narrative, like they did when in the letter. We've all heard that now, and the horrifying blood-curdling scream. Listen to it carefully, you'll hear the voice of a man. If it were Pat who confronted her when she ran out of the house, she would have said, she said his name, and we listened to that tape over and over and over again whenever she told him, "Michael, don't do this, Michael, don't do that. Michael, stop." In fact, if you listen to what she keeps saying, "Stop, stop," listen for something else. you will hear sniffing. You can only pick it up when you get an enhanced tape. What is she saying to stop? Is he snorting coke? That's what it sounds like. So when she says stop, it makes a lot of sense. But anyway, according to Pat, and according to Peter Hackett, she fell down the stairs of Brewer's house, tripped on the stairs, tumbled down, and then got up and ran. Pack testified, there's the stairs, Pack testified that he stayed in his car at all times, never got out. So whose male voice is that on the tape? If Pack is lying and he did get out, don't you think when she saw him, her driver, even though she suspected him of being in on it, that he would somehow be identified? She, Michael, what are you doing? Michael, stop! Instead, blood-curdling scream for her life. Because there are other people there. And if you listen to the enhanced tape that we have, you will hear the voices of men in the background several times. And you will hear voices that are not Pack's and are not Brewer's. But you gotta really listen to it, you gotta pay attention to it. I can tell you truly, the police never did that. How do I know? I sued them, as you know, to get the tapes. I had to take them through 2 lawsuits and 2 appeals to win and get the tapes. I did it, I got the tapes, against their will. And they had to send Sergeant Portella, who is one of the investigating detectives, chief on the case, to deliver the tapes to me at my office. So he showed up, I guess on a day he thought I wouldn't be there, it was a weekend, I think, and I heard about it from somebody, they called me, and I zoomed to the office and I caught him before he went away. and I said, Sergeant, come on in, let's talk. He came in, and he delivered the tapes. And the tapes, I said, Sergeant, you're supposed to also deliver me your enhancement of the tapes and any transcript you made of what's on the tapes. He said, we never did an enhancement, and he said, we never did a transcript. We never wrote one. This is an investigation. And that's what they did. And then I said to him, well, are you giving me, it doesn't look like you're giving me the original, you give me a disc. He said, I'm not giving you the original because we don't have the original. For 2 years, they misrepresented to the courts under oath that they were not going to give up the tapes because the tapes were involved in an open, active, ongoing criminal investigation, which is also a lie. We now know from Commissioner Harrison that there was only one detective part-time working on that case since 2012, Portella. But they put under oath to the courts that it was an open, active, ongoing criminal investigation. And so they couldn't give up the tapes. In other words, they told the court they had the tapes, they weren't giving them up. They never had the tapes. They lied by indirection. It's called deceit. There's deceit by what? Prevarication and all kinds of deceits. They deceived the court and me and the public for years. The originals, they said, were with the state police. I had also subpoenaed the state police, just in case. And sure enough, when I talked to them and said, hey, give up the tape, they said, we don't have them, we don't know where they are. So we don't know whether those tapes have been tampered with, doctored, they may not have been. It doesn't sound like they were, but you just don't know. The evidence is tainted, it's no good. That's what they did with the tapes. Think about that. Right? So, when you listen to their version of the tape, it really is poor. Okay. We do more steps we did, right? Okay. Let's stay with that. When Shannan runs. The claim is she falls and hits her head. Who makes that claim? Pat and one other guy, Peter Hackett. Peter Hackett claims he wasn't there, but he just heard about the fact that she fell on her head. And she had intracranial bleeding and got confused, said Hackett, and ran into the marsh. There was one other person saying this, and that was Pat. Pat, who never met Hackett in his life until the next day after this, is on the phone with Hackett for some 45 minutes a year later. And after that's when we hear the story about the head fall. They put together that story. But if you listen to the tape yourself, there's no falling by Shannan whatsoever. But there is a struggle and an earring. We know what she was wearing because the kind of earrings, the hoop earrings she was wearing, because Diaz identified to the Jersey City Police everything she was wearing that day. And they were hoop earrings. One of those earrings is found on the driveway. So there was that struggle. Somebody ripped her earring off. That's how intense the struggle was in that moment. But she's also missing something else, and that is her jacket. Now, at that time in the morning, it's still 50, maybe 60 degrees. It's May 1st. It's still cold enough to be wearing a jacket. She is without a jacket after that. That's when the jacket ends up in the driveway. Maybe somebody, that's how she got away. They grabbed her, and her jacket came off in the hand, and she kept going. We don't know. Right? But listen as well. I call upon my female audience. You hear any jingling of a pocketbook at any point on that tape? You all know what that would sound like. You never hear that. There is no pocketbook. Coletti says later on that Shannan, when she knocked on his door, did not have a pocketbook. That makes sense when she bolts out of there, right? She's afraid for her life. She leaves behind her bag and her pocketbook. Barbara Brennan, whose door she knocks on and who says she had a clear view of Shannan, said she had no pocketbook. Yet, when Shannan's belongings are found a few yards behind Hackett's house in the marsh, and the pocketbook is found there with her jeans, how did the pocketbook get there? Did the police ever ask that question? I don't think so. But something's wrong with that picture. No pocketbook. She runs to Coletti's house.
Shannan. Hello? Hello? What are you doing? Something like Gilbert, Gilbert.
Play it back to yourselves a few times, and here's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear what you read up there. You're going to hear Shannan say when she knocks on Coletti's door, Coletti, who was the president of the association, who had a little clique of friends who were on the association board, including Peter Hackett, who he says is his best friend, Barbara Brennan, Thomas Canning, whose wife got a job through Barbara Hackett as a nurse, and whose kids all are best friends with one another, all in a little pocket of houses, right there in Oak Beach. You're going to hear this Gus Coletti tell us what really happened, according to him. And he's not telling the truth at all. But more importantly, listen carefully to what Shannan says when she gets to his door. She has to go up the stairs, knock on his door, you hear that, he answers the door, and she says, you, she's out of breath, she can barely talk, you, it's you. You, it's you. Are you gonna kill? And then it's cut off. You'll hear it. It gives the lie to the entire police story. Either she recognized Coletti, which means he would have been at the house, at Brewer's house, or she had been there a previous time, which is not likely, or he's there with somebody else in this pocket of friends, and who knows how far the pocket goes. She's identifying somebody that she knows. You, it's you. Are you gonna kill? Who gets cut off. And what does Coletti respond to that? Remember, it's Coletti who's the one that says when he calls 911, 10 minutes later, he says, she's a 14-year-old girl. And what does he say to the 14-year-old girl? Don't get yourself hurt. In my world, there he is. In my world, don't get yourself hurt. And I say my world, the world where I've represented organized crime figures, people who are tough guys, that's a threat. That's a threat. Why in God's name would the man be making a threat to a 14-year-old girl who's desperately knocking on his door? Not yet. All right, I know. All right, and as that, and listen to what Coletti says now about what really happened, and take that and weigh it against what you saw happen or heard happen. Sorry, what you heard happen. By the way, Gus Coletti, and I think that I met Gus Coletti. Befriended the guy, I spoke with him at length about what happened. He's told 4 different discrete stories, 3 to the press, 2 of which we have here in tape, 1 of which I have a record of, and he told me a very separate story as well about what happened that morning. By the way, it was a former pitcher from the Pittsburgh Pirates, just so. But anyway.
Yes, this, I'm with Oak Beach in the association. There's a young girl about 14 years old running around here screaming, and there's some guy trying to follow her. What's the address here? I'm at 17 to Fairway. All right, you have to fix up the girl all the way? Okay. You have to fix up the girl all the way? The girl is about 14 years old, got blonde hair, very small. The boy, I can't tell, he was into like the, Suburban? Black. You have to get a pay number or anything? No, I didn't. Okay, how do you come? 422-0999. Okay, so, they came up here today, after the agency. What was that number? It's a Oak Beach Association. Okay. All right, my brother Moses. All right, you guys find your name? I'll be watching. Okay.
Coletti made that call 10 minutes after Shannan left his house. He made the call at 5:22 a.m. to 911. He identified a black Suburban. Pack never drove a black Suburban, and Pack himself testified that he drove a Jeep. Was somebody else driving that black Suburban that Coletti encountered? Why isn't this looked into? Why hasn't this been investigated? It's not my job to do it, but I've done it. Let me read you some of the things that Coletti said on some of the other tapes. Yeah, I opened the door and she came in and she just stood there, looked, staring at me, yelling, help me, help me, help me. Did you hear him open any door? Did she ever go inside his house? The answer is clearly no. But that's what he's testified to over and over. He swore it was true. And it didn't happen. He tried to make himself a nice guy, he wasn't. I think Shannan was chased. This is Coletti's words. I think Shannan was chased. Does it sound like what I suggested to you before, that there was a hunt for Shannan Gilbert? She was pounding on my door, yelling for help. Help me, help me, help me. I came to the door, I opened the door, she stepped in, she just stood there, yelling, help me. And she had trouble standing on her feet. So I called the police, they were on their way, and she took off again. He called the police 10 minutes after she left. So the whole idea that Shannan acted irrationally, because when she herself had called 911, now Coletti calls 911 and she bolts. Obviously she's drugged out, right? That's the theory. That's not true. None of that is true. Listen to the tape. She never went inside the house. She never yelled, help me, help me, help me, help me, ever. Listen to the tape from all the way from Brewer's house to Coletti's house, not one such word. He's lying. Why is he lying? Here's one reason he might be lying. He says, Hackett, he's one of my best friends. Ask me anything you want, he tells the Jersey Star Ledger reporter, ask me anything you want, but don't ask me to give up one of my neighbors. That's what he said. And in his fourth version, he adds on that she ran into the marsh next to his house, which is not the marsh where she's found. In order to make you believe that she's willing to run into marshes. If you saw the marsh next to Coletti's house, it's impenetrable. She couldn't have run into the marsh. But Coletti did hear possibly a scream, and that was the scream at Brewer's house. Was Coletti there? Or somebody with him? Were they there? He says, as to the tapes that are on the, at the booth, they're wiped out. The tapes were erased. And the man in charge of the tapes when they were erased was Peter Hackett. Coletti says, we in the association, we didn't know that they were why did they get erased? They were 2 months older, they got erased. I didn't know that they were, that the crime had been committed. So that's why they got erased. That's what he said. It turns out that Peter Hackett, according to a man who lived in the community that took his testimony, Charles Sirota, Sirota had been in charge of the tapes up till about 2 weeks before this event. And then Hackett took over the tapes. And Hackett claimed that there was a young man whose name he didn't remember who was in charge of taking care of those tapes. And I asked Sirota if there was ever such a thing, and I asked Cannon if there ever was such a thing. They said, no, Hackett made that up. Hackett himself told Mary Gilbert and told Cherie Gilbert that the tapes were important, and he would make sure he checked them so that they could show any criminal activities. And then the tapes were erased, and his wife said on Good Morning America, oh, the tapes just got taken over after 2 weeks. There's a bunch of lies being told in this case. So Shannan runs, no screams, and then the phone just disappeared. We don't know why. And then she knocks on Mrs. Brennan's door, which is around the corner. That's Barbara Brennan's house. That's the door she knocked on. Mrs. Brennan makes a call, 911. Okay. Mrs. Brennan's call is very short, very brief, and she simply says, there's a girl who's trying to get in, who's knocking on my door, and she's asking for help. She's calling out for help. Later on, I get to talk to Mrs. Brennan, who was very reluctant to talk to me, of course, but eventually she did on the threat that I would take a deposition. And so she gave me in exchange for me not taking her deposition, she gave me her statement, a sworn affidavit, in which she said, I observed a young woman in her 20s was looking into my house for a read. The outdoor lights of my property were not on because they went off automatically when it became daylight. It was light enough outside at that time for me to see the young woman. I was able to see the young woman, whom I now know to have been Shannan Gilbert, as plain as day because it was daylight. No flashlight was needed outside to see. She said, let me in, I'm in danger. She did not look disheveled. She was not crying. She wore black tight jeans. She had a baby doll look and loose fitting. None of her clothes appeared to have been soiled. I didn't see any jacket upon or near her. I did not see a pocketbook. Within 5 minutes of my call to Tom Cannon, the neighbor across the street, he and his wife Eleanor came over to my kitchen door. The police did not enter my property to look at footprints that were on the deck. I never spoke with Peter Hackett. Peter Hackett never came over to discuss the incident with me. Peter Hackett was the vice president of the association. That's Brennan's testimony. From there, we don't know what happened to Shannan Gilbert. Or do we? Actually, we do know something. Thomas Canning, the friend, a landscaper from Oak Beach, the friend of all these people, he comes over, he claims with his dog, and he sees footprints in the wet dew on the deck of Brennan's house, going toward the water. He says that in those footprints, they look like slippers that she was wearing. Shannan had been wearing lace-up kind of slippers. And Canning said he saw that. But when his boots went on, when I cross-examined him, he said, where are your boots then? If you were walking along, where are your prints of your boots? There were none. Only the slippers he claimed, made a mark, which made no sense, of course, because Thomas Canning made that up. Thomas Canning claimed that he went alone with his dog or his dog back when he saw nobody and went home. Barbara Brennan, who's a little more honest, says, no, he came over with his wife. And they had tea afterwards. And the cops never came to look at the footprints. Canning says, and I have all this on oath, by the way. Canning says, 2 police cars pulled up, one driven by an African-American man, one driven by a white man, and they never got out of their cars to look at the footprints. Does that sound right to you? There's a girl missing, 14 years old, and her footprints appear to lead to the sea, and nobody gets out to look at the footprints. That's because that was a lie. But there's somebody else who says they saw Shannan Gilbert after she knocked on Brennan's door, and that's Justin Canning. Justin Canning is Tom Canning's son, a heroin addict. Best friends of the son of Agasano, who lived right next door, and he died of an overdose of heroin. And best friends with Charlie Hackett, Peter Hackett's son. And Justin Cannon tells the New York Post, we have that? Okay. Tells the New York Post that he and his father went looking for Shannan and saw her disheveled, standing in the street, and then she looked confused and left. He later testifies, when I take his testimony, that he never said that to the New York Post. They just made that up. And he called them to retract it, and they never did. Now, I know that reporter. He's dead now. But he's a dyed-in-the-wool reporter, many years experience. You think he would just make that up?
What?
They saw Shannan Gilbert. And they're lying about what happened to her, because they know what happened to her. Because the next place she ends up is in the hands of TIR Handle. Now, did Shannan really go into the marsh? Well, we have the statement of the police commissioner, Dormer, who said, of the chief of police, Dominic Garone at the time, who said Shannan wandered into the marsh. Listen to what Byron says Shannan did when he held the press conference on May 13, 2022, and tried to put to bed the final story of Shannan Gilbert. You're looking at the reads that the police showed to the press to say that this is how it looked for Shannan Gilbert on the morning she went missing. I walked the marsh myself 3 times, so I have experience with how you get in the marsh and what's there when you get there. The temperature, is that the temperature?
Sunrise.
The sunrise. Sunrise, if you look at that, we searched it. Sunrise occurs at 5:51 a.m., but twilight occurs, civil twilight occurs at 5:22. And Shannan could not have entered that marsh at 5:22. It had to be later based upon Barbara Brennan's phone call. So it was already twilight when she entered the marsh. And you could hear birds chirping in the background as she runs, morning birds. The, what do they call it, astronomical twilight starts at 4:07 a.m. So in other words, there's light. The police, however, show you a tape that indicates that it was dark, and of course she got lost and confused in the darkness in the marsh, and that's what they said. It is a misrepresentation. It is a misrepresentation by the police, so much so that one of my good friends, a reporter of many years' experience who was at the police press conference, left in disgust early and came out and told me and Senator Boyle, who I was standing with outside the press conference, that he was disgusted because the police were misrepresenting the marsh and the way it looked in that picture, showing real darkness and reeds. They did that by closing down the aperture on their lens and make, you know how you can get a contrast on the light with black in the background? That is not how it looked when Shannan Gilbert allegedly would have gone into the marsh. That's a fake picture. That's what the police showed the public and the press. The weather. Shannan, they said she died of natural causes because she might have gotten cold and just dropped down. The weather that day at 6 a.m. was already 60 degrees. By noon, it was 80. Perfectly beautiful day. Shannan didn't die from the weather. Here's the marsh, the real marsh. The picture on my left, the picture is the marsh on the south side of the road going along Oak Beach. That's how it looked. Do you think she just wandered in, as the police said? Does anybody with the right mind at all say that could happen? You have to cut your way in. It's impenetrable. police didn't show you that picture. They showed you reeds that you could part. You could not get into that marsh anywhere unless somebody had cut a way in. And I walked that whole thing 3 times. And I walked the perimeter, I can't tell you how many times. There is no such cut in unless you're in Hackett's backyard. The picture on the right, that's how it looked around May 1st, years later. That's on the north side where there's less sunlight than on the south side. The growth is easier. Look at that. Could you get in? Could anybody walk in there? I tried. I had a cutter to get in. I could go only a few feet per hour. And I fell down into the sticker bushes doing it. There's no way that girl wandered into that marsh. That's a complete lie. And a willful one when they showed you a fake slide.
It was taken at the same time of year, the time of day as when Shannan went missing. These reasons were all too often told. They can distort someone's life, causing them to lose a sense of direction. One cannot tell where the highway is or where the bay is. The reason brush can become impenetrable because there's a trench on east and west.
You heard it. Does it now make any sense to you? You know, if you didn't know any of these things, oh, okay, fine, that's what the police said. That's all there is to it. They made all of that up. It's impossible. And their whole story depends upon her being able to get into that marsh, to say that she got confused and lost within it. There were plenty of people who walked that marsh. There were boards all over those mosquito canals for hunters and survivalists would use to walk through the marsh. But they had to fight their way in or go through Hackett's yard, the only opening that I knew that you could find. By the way, when you hear, are we going further with Byron? Yeah. Go ahead.
I think our opinion is that this was an accident. We don't want to, we want to keep our opinion of this being an accident broad and not narrow it down. That is a possibility. I'm not saying that it was, but it's undetermined. Our opinion is that it's an accident.
Our opinion is that it's an accident. These are homicide detectives. The medical examiner said that their official medical examiner, said the cause was undetermined. But they said it's an accident. An unfortunate, tragic accident is the phrase they also used. That's what they said. Homicide detectives soak their lives, any of you who are police force here, they soak their lives in evidence. If they don't get the right evidence, murderers walk. So they know that their whole lives are devoted to gathering evidence. Evidence, evidence, always evidence, as Sherlock Holmes said. That's the cop's job. That's what they think about all day and night. And yet, when it comes to Shannan Gilbert, without a scintilla of evidence that she died of any accident, and an overwhelming amount of circumstantial evidence that she died deliberately by someone, they conclude that it was an accident, with no evidence of it whatsoever. Does that sound like the police to you? Something's wrong with this story. Sorry to get excited.
Shannan clearly states that he's trying to kill me. I mean, how much work do you give that? Without moving out of wholesale? Listen, I'm going to simplify everything. It's a horrible accident. It's tragic. But we're still open to information that can help us come to a stronger conclusion. But right now, we believe it's a tragic accident. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
So in other words, as soon as somebody asks an important question from the reporters, You know, how do you explain what she said? They cut him off, and now watch what they do. Oh, that's it? Okay. They walked away. The rest of this tape, as soon as he had made that answer, and he's doing what they're telling him to say, he didn't investigate this case. They walk away and take no more questions. As soon as somebody asks a question and challenges what they say. This is what we're dealing with. And I must ask the press, there's some great press out there, but my goodness, where are my investigative press reporters that were at that meeting who would have said, hold on a minute, what's going on here? And just not buy hook, line, and sinker the police line. Byram also claimed that Shannan had issues with substance abuse. I checked every hospital in the North Jersey area. She was never admitted to any hospital. She was never admitted to any hospital. Her boyfriend said she used cocaine with her customers. Does that make you a complete hallucinatory freak that would run into the marsh and find your way in somehow? He also said she had violent outbursts. There's not a scintilla of evidence that that girl ever had a violent outburst there that evening. There was no evidence that she had violent outbursts. He said that she had significant psychological defects. And then he goes on and says, it's our opinion that it was an accident. That's the layout from above of the event. Take a look at where her body's recovered, close to the highway. She's on her way out. If she's there, or if she was herself trying to get in and out, she would have been right near the highway. I was there. I know that at any point in that marsh, when you walk, you can hear the cars going on the highway, so you know they were there. You can even see their lights on the poles. You know you had a way out. And if you went the other way towards the houses, from where she was, it's not that far. You could see into the houses. You could see people drinking coffee in the morning, depending on where you stood. So this whole story that they're making up is a complete fantasy. The police department story. Shannan's highway bone. There it is. If you'll notice, both horns are cracked off and missing. That happens when you fracture them, and then baby animals take them after that happens. There's what a hyoid bone looks like. Look at the hole, and there's the measurement. Why is that hole there? By the way, when I went into the marsh through Peter Hackett's backyard, and there was an entrance that he had into the marsh with the remains of a deck that he had going out into the marsh, there were arrow tips all inside in the marsh right behind his house. Interesting fact. Okay. Pat claims he left after he drove around. Well, where did he go? Somebody asked me the question before. Where did he go? Pat, we know he claims that he went to meet a man. He got a call from the agency. Why is he getting a call from the agency if this is an independent act? And the agency asks him to meet up with another driver to take that driver's money and buy some kind of a green card so that they can deposit the money, a green dot card or something it's called. And so he can deposit the money. He's supposed to go to Horace Boulevard in Queens and make that meeting with the other guy. The police said they interviewed everybody. They interviewed and they confirmed Pack's alibi, that that's where he was. And that's what he did. The police never got in touch with the agency that was involved, and the other driver did meet Pack. Not necessarily to drop money off a green dot. We don't know the real reason they met. But I talked to that guy. He's in Miami right now. I tracked him down, and I called him. And he said, no, the police never interviewed me. nothing about that. So that's what happened to Pat. Next morning, there he is, Dr. Peter Hackett. Dr. Peter Hackett, a man with no practice of medicine whatsoever, who had worked in emergency rooms and got fired because he was accused of theft of drugs in the Long Beach Memorial Hospital emergency room. You see the picture on the right, fairly famous picture, right? That's when he falls down claiming he had a heart attack or defibrillation moment. Hackett claims it was he told, under oath, he said that he told the family that, the Gilbert family, that it was his mission to find Shannan Gilbert only a week after she went missing. That's what he said. And he did everything he could to carry out that mission. Like a racing case. There's an old story, a story by Arthur Conan Doyle, what's his name, Sherlock Holmes, and it's called The Adventure of Silver Bullet Blades. In that story, the case is solved by Sherlock Holmes because the dog didn't bark when the dog should have. You may remember that. It's a famous story. Hackett and his wife are the dogs that didn't bark in this case. Hackett, who had made it his mission to find Shannan, claimed that 1 to 2 weeks after she disappeared, he formed the opinion that she had fallen down, hit her head, had intracranial bleeding, wandered into the marsh, and died of natural causes. And he told this to his wife, who also claimed she had the same opinion in that period of time. And in their mission to find Shannan, listen to what they did. Thank you. Sorry, I keep doing that. He never looked in the marsh. Testified. He never looked in the marsh where he thought she was. He didn't, when he was visited by a pack and Diaz, a boyfriend, on Monday, May 3rd, to see what happened to Shannan, and he talked to them. He made all these calls right after that. He never called Shannan Gilbert. The one person you're looking for, you never call. And I have all this, in evidence. He was a former police surgeon of Suffolk County and the head of emergency medical services in Suffolk County until he got fired. And he called the Ellenville Police Department to see where she was. He called the Jersey City Police Department and talked to Camacho, but he never called the Suffolk County Police Department. And he even had their numbers written down. I saw it. He never called any of them. He never called any of his neighbors to say, hey, did she knock on your door? The vice president of the association was looking diligently for her. He never called any neighbors. He never called Barbara Brennan, his close friend, who the next week is at the party at his house on May 9th, Mother's Day, that he's hosting, and he never talks to her about what happened to Shannan Gilbert. And this is when Shannan Gilbert's posters are up in the community already. So who did he call? Well, he called Camacho. And for those of you who have any doubt that when Mary Gilbert gets the call from this Dr. Hackett she didn't know, and he says to her, I run a home for wayward girls, and she wants to go in it, and I need your permission. But she left with her driver and hasn't come back, and I'm worried. And everybody says, well, Mary Gilbert's a little bit crazy, That didn't really happen. Caesar Camacho, in writing the Jersey City police records, he told Camacho the same story. And Camacho immediately suspected him. of being the killer. And set up a meeting for him to meet with Camacho in Oak Beach to walk in the marsh together. Hackett made the appointment, didn't show up, and then quashed it again. He said, I can't, I have to go to Arizona. I can't have it. And never would contact Camacho again. And then Camacho, along with the FBI, the Nassau County Police Department, and the New York State Police, were all told they're off the case by Spoda and Burke. And so Camacho no longer investigated any further. That's what really happened. That's how he made his calls. So he makes a call to Mary Gilbert, who he doesn't know, and does he really call her to tell her about, does he call her, I just want to help out? Or does he call her to try to find out what she knows? There's an old saying from the Bible, I think it's in Proverbs. The guilty flee where none pursue. And very often, the guilty call and try to find out everything they can from everybody else to see what's going on. He calls the Ellenville Police Department to see if she's been reported missing. He calls the Jersey City, he talks to Camacho, and tries to find out from Camacho what he knows. Why is he doing that? Does that sound like an innocent man? And in that call, does it occur to you, if you hear Mary Gilbert talk about that call, does it occur to you that what he actually does is he taunts Mary? He's taunting her. He's letting her, he doesn't know who she is. He's letting her know that her daughter is a sex worker. As Hackett testified to me, she's a hooker. That's what he did. Was he taunting her? When Diaz came to look for Shannan, that's his girlfriend. Whether you like it or not, that's his girlfriend. And he's out looking for her. Hackett takes them directly to the water, he and Pat, and points out across the water and says, over Fire Island, other people have washed up there, she's going to wash up there. That's what he tells his boyfriend, only the girl's missing for only a day. Nobody said she's dead. He's taunting her. Does that sound familiar? By the way, Rex Feuerman loved taunting. As you know, calling up one of the girls, one of the Gilbert Four, he said to Melissa Barthelemy, and taunting her sister, and saying, are you a half-breed? You know, your sister is a whore, things like that. Same behavior. When I asked the question at the deposition, the key question of why didn't you do those things? Why didn't you make those calls? Why didn't you look in the marsh? His answer was, and his lawyer said, because he knew she was dead, John. His lawyer said that. And I guess that was supposed to be a joke. And then Hackett never answered. There were over 300 contradictions in his testimony in the 3 depositions I took of him. His wife, over 192 times in a matter of a 3-hour deposition, said, I don't recall about simple things. And there's many, many other facts I can tell you, but I don't have the time. He wrote 2 letters in 48 hours where he totally lied and said that he never had ever called Mary Gilbert. He called Mary Gilbert twice. We had the records. I confronted him. The second time he called, he was in New Jersey, and his phone paid off the Hasbro Power in New Jersey. When I asked him why we were in New Jersey on a Thursday that week after she disappeared, he said it wasn't true. Somehow the records were wrong. But he was there in New Jersey. By the way, one of the things that Feuerman enjoyed was torture. We all know that from the DA's papers that he filed in the bail application. He loved torture. In case you didn't notice, you can't enjoy torture if the person is dead. You have to torture live people. And if you get pleasure out of torture, out of taunting and torture, you keep the person alive. Was Shannan Gilbert still alive? It is possible. And then we have a neighbor, Bruce Anderson, who says that, and he gives an affidavit to this effect, which I have, and he says that in his affidavit, Hackett told Brewer that he had Shannan Gilbert in his home and medicated her, and then she got out and somehow disappeared and was not to be seen again. And so we have that direct evidence from a neighbor who's no close friend of Hackett at all and no enemy either. Why wasn't Brewer arrested? The police have no answer for that. They're engaging in crossing state lines to promote prostitution. They're not arrested. So many of the witnesses I told you about were never interviewed. Justin Cannon was never interviewed by the Freedom Suffolk County Police Department to this day. Okay. Let me do one other thing on this, and then I'll move on to some of the other victims. Byra says, oh, you have something? You got it? Right, go.
Not related to the other bodies found here in the marsh, even unrelated, is this essentially one of the in Suffolk County, or is she being removed that there is an action of the other parties that work together in the concept that they're engaging around?
So I'd like to point out, and we mentioned in the video, that there are significant differences between this case and the other cases. In this case, she's found on the south side of the parkway. In all the other cases, they're found on the north side of the parkway. In this case, our victim called 911, which in fact resulted in police responding. None of the other cases resulted in 911 calls. In this case, she had a driver. That was essentially security. None of the other victims, as far as we know, had any sort of security. She's found with her identification. She's found with money with her, with cash with her. There's no effort to conceal her body. She's found in the vicinity of where she was last seen. And again, the police did in fact respond to Gus Coletti and Barbara Brennan's 911 calls.
So that's the similarity. Are you listening? She's on the south side, all the others are on the north side of the parkway. It's the same parkway with the same marsh. They're all engaged in the same employment. But they find that to be a significant difference. So therefore she wasn't murdered. Shannan Gilbert called 911. The others didn't. That's a happenstance, isn't it? That's something that was imposed by accident. That's not a dissimilarity. She had a driver, she had security, he says. So did the others. They had security, they didn't necessarily do their job. Just like Pack didn't do his job. She had, what did he say? She had an ID with her. No, she didn't. Her ID was left a third of a mile away behind Hackett's home. That's just an outright falsehood. She had money with her. A handful of dollars, $20 bills in her wallet. And she didn't have it. It was in the pocketbook. The pocketbook that mysteriously ends up there with her clothing. By the way, what did the police say about how her jeans came off? That they were laying there a third of a mile away. Dormer, Commissioner Dormer said in a public meeting, they came off in the bramble bushes as she ran. And I'm making it don't sound Irish because he's Irish, but that's what he said. That's the absurdity of their position. He says there was no effort to conceal her body. There was no effort to conceal the other 6 bodies laying all along that same strip. 6. And the only effort to conceal these bodies, the 4 that we know about, the so-called Gilbert 4, was 3 of them, not all of them, 3 out of the 4 had burlap coverings on them. 1 of them didn't. So that similarity is nonsense. But dissimilarity, rather, is nonsense. He said that she was found in the vicinity of where she was last seen, where the others weren't. Does that matter? And how do we know where they were killed? How far away is where they were found from Massapequa? As the crow flies, 10 minutes, 5 minutes? And in Shannan's case, he said, unlike the others, the cops responded. Oh, of course they did. They were called. That's another happenstance. That's not a difference. But let's ask the detective this. The Gilgo 4 were found 33 feet away from the edge of the parkway, according to the district attorney's bail application to the court. And in this bail application, the DA sought to prove that Hoyerman was likely the killer. So they showed the similarities between the different people who were killed and him. 33 feet from the edge of the parkway. Shannan Gilbert is found 150 feet inside from the parkway. The difference in yards is 10 to 30 yards. And if you ever walk a football field, 10 to 30 yards, it ain't much. That's a similarity, not a dissimilarity. They were all petite females, said the DA. All. Shannan was a petite female. They were all 22 to 27 years old, said the DA. Shannan was 22 to 27 years old, and she was 24. They were all sex workers, the exception of the infant, of course, but they're not in. We're talking about the 4 Gilgo 4 people. So was Shannan. They all had missing clothing. So did Shannan. The DA said they were all missing personal possessions. So was Shannan. Where's the ring that was on her hand, according to Diaz? By the way, Hackett had a predilection for fingers. He claimed that he reattached fingers on his kitchen table of a man whose fingers were cut off by an accident. He claimed that when he helped to recover body parts from Flight 800, where he undoubtedly met Burke, who was doing the same thing and bragged about that in his resentencing application when he went to jail. Hackett claimed that he found fingers stuffed in the chairs that came out of the plane. Fingers. And he claimed he knew the fingers would be there because he had helped recover another flight when he was 18 years old at Kennedy Airport. And the fingers were all stuffed in the chairs. He had a thing about fingers. When you look at Shannan's body, you'll notice that the fingers on her left hand are missing. But that similarity doesn't matter to the detective. He said, the district attorney said, all were killed by homicide. Well, we have Dr. Michael Biden, the most world-renowned medical examiner, who I got to know, by the way. The reason he did come into the case was not because he was looking for fame and glory, as he's been accused by the law enforcement. He came into the case because his brother Bobby played semi-pro football with me when I was on the Long Island Giants. I was a much bigger guy, when I was on the Long Island Giants many years before, we were friends. So I visited Michael and asked him to step in, and he did. And he said that her death was consistent with strangulation and not consistent with natural causes, something Byron never mentioned. So the homicide aspect is there in all those cases. He said that the cell phones of 2 out of the 4 victims were used by the killer. Isn't that similar to Hackett's calls? Several of them were strangled. It looks like Shannan was strangled. They were all found in the marsh. They were all laid on top of the marsh. None of them were buried. Shannan was laid. She was found face up with her head on a bush. They all, before, at some point, he called them while he worked in Midtown Manhattan. Shannan, that night, worked in Midtown Manhattan. The last cell site for Melissa Bartholomew is on July 11, 2009 at 1:43 a.m. Megan Waterman on June 6, 2010 at 1:30 a.m. at the Holiday Inn, and the cell phone call came at 1:30 a.m. and then again at 3:11 a.m. Amber Costello, there was a call at 1:18 on September 2nd, 1:18 a.m. and another one at 11:17 p.m. on September 2nd. In other words, the caller in all the cases, including in Shannan's case, was working in the early morning hours. That's another similarity. All those similarities, and you can think of more, I'm sure you can, all those similarities and the absurd, silly dissimilarities cited by the detective, and they conclude that this is an accident. What's going on here? I'm sorry, I have to keep asking you. How much time do we have?
It is 6:05.
Okay. All right, I'll just wrap it up. Okay. There's plenty more, as you can well imagine, dealing with Shannan Gilbert. Do you walk out of here with any doubt that she was murdered? Mike Brown says she was murdered. I say she was murdered. Everybody involved in this case has done the evidence work that I've done says she was murdered. And the police say she died by accident with no evidence. Something's amiss here. There were other defaults by the police in these cases. When Jessica Taylor disappears after she gets picked up outside of Washington and is driven by a bunch of kids in the cars in Brooklyn where they stay, that's Jessica. Where she stays with them in this kind of a community living type of house. She brings along her pet dog, which belonged to Khalil, her pimp. When she disappears 5 days later, and she goes to Long Island, and I talked to the last person who saw her alive. She's now living in another country. I located her and spoke to her at length. That dog was left behind, tied up in a rope in the house. The other occupants got ticked off because the dog was not being treated right, and they had to get rid of the dog. And she claimed, this girl, that the dog was given to some policeman who drove up and asked for the dog. The dog ends up back in the hands of Khalil. Nobody knows why. Nobody's investigated it properly as to why. And the police indicated that they thought Khalil, this pimp, was a perfectly honest person. That's the investigation of Jessica Taylor. If you wonder why I believe it was so many years before Shannan's case. I also, this isn't where it stopped. I also, by sheer coincidence, some people out in Hollywood asked me if I would step in and help a person they were doing a story about, they were investigating up in Buffalo. Some Hollywood writer said to me, would you help us? We're trying to find out if this girl, we're trying to prove that this girl was murdered. Her name is Amanda Winkowski. Amanda's a beautiful girl, there she is. And Amanda was a sex worker. Amanda was found in 2009 in the wintertime in a garbage can, naked, stuffed upside down with the top on it. The medical examiner there, another one who works for the police department, ruled that it was an accidental death because she had heroin in her system. She was a heroin addict. She knew how much heroin she should take every day. She was a long-time heroin addict. They ruled it an accidental death. The mother struggled for years to have it declared a homicide, to no avail. They called me and asked me to step in and help out. So I went to Buffalo to help this poor family, again, pro bono, with my own business. I stepped in and I made a motion in court to set aside the finding. The judge said, statute of limitations ran out, tough luck. I had 5 experts over the years, their reports, 5 of them, including the current one, say she was murdered. Some of the world-renowned experts. The court ignored that and said, nope, statute of limitations. I appealed it. I went to Rochester and I appealed it, and we lost again. But Amanda Winkowski is important here for a different reason, not just because I did the work. But it turns out that her mother, Leslie, was close friends with Melissa Barthelme's mother. And the reason they were close friends, I didn't know this when I took the case. We just talked when they discovered this. The reason they were close friends because their respective daughters were co-workers as sex workers. They worked together, Melissa Barthelme. And they both together flew out to California in working for the sex trafficking organization up in Buffalo that had connections in Suffolk County and had connections with the girls who were killed allegedly by Bischoff. They were flown out to California to train as sex workers for the Hollywood stars, to service the Hollywood stars. And the bottom girl, as they are called in the business, the girl who recruits and trains for this large organization, they're organized like a managerial operation, big time with the internet. This sex trafficking bottom girl who did the work to recruit them, I talked to her, I got a hold of her in the Midwest, where she lives now. And she confirmed everything I'm telling you. They flew them out there to train them to service Hollywood stars, and the bottom girl was servicing a Hollywood star whose name I won't mention. Weeks before Shannan went to her death, Shannan flew out to California. We don't know why. Approximately the same time, roughly speaking, within a year or so, that Amanda had flown out there with Melissa Barthelme. And we all know what happened to Melissa Barthelme. Do you think there might be a connection within the sex trafficking organization? Somebody ought to look at that. That sex trafficking organization is vast. I've learned more about this than you can imagine. It is vast. Like I said, the magma that first comes out of the volcano, it's spread everywhere. Filth covered over with a thin crust of respectability like a Hollywood star, or a police chief, or a banker, or a fireman. That thin crust of respectability. We've investigated far and wide the famous Oasis in Smithtown, where there's a list of 140 significant people who would go to Oasis and engage in multiple sex behavior, big parties at that Oasis, and they refuse to give up, we've subpoenaed, we can't get the record that has 140 names. It's being covered up by Suffolk County. 1 or 2 more things and we'll take a break and then we'll come back with the surprise. Okay? This is a copy of Shannan Gilbert's diary. And I read through her whole diary. Please have a copy of it. They never looked at it. I'm certain of it. I know that because I gave them everything I'm telling you in bibliography you're getting tonight, I gave them. They gave it back and said they don't want to read it. This is in her diary, Shannan's diary. The only entry in her, just hundreds of entries in her diary of different jobs that she serviced and different places that she worked. The only entry dealing with Long Island is that entry. What a coincidence! Massapequa, Nassau County. The only entry. Did the police look at this yet? Hopefully after tonight, and somebody here may be a cop and go back and tell them. They ought to be looking at it. And it's Chris. Who's Chris? We know that Hoyman used a variety of very common names. Matt, John, Tom, to name three that come to mind. Is Chris a surprise? Why is that important? Well, you know, I brought forth the taxi driver who said that he met Shannan Gilbert in the Sago Motor Lodge, and later on, Hoyerman popped up with a gun in the backseat of her car. Somebody ought to look at it. One last point. Is Peter Hackett connected to Hoyerman? People ask that. I don't know. But in Newsday, you see that what they seized in Hoyerman's house was survivalist gear. That's a very particular kind of thing here. That's a very particular kind of activity. And in today's world where everybody knows each other in particular activity, meet each other on the internet, and get to know each other through the internet. And that's a small, very unusual group of people. Peter Hackett testified, and I have it in his diary as well, that Peter Hackett formed a group called Survivalist Dynamics that he ran as a business. He's only a few miles away, like 5 to 10 minutes as the crow flies, from Rex Oil. Just a thought. I'm not telling you to draw the conclusion that you might want to, or it's encouraging, because I'm interested in evidence. But that's part of the evidence. More needs to be done. I'm going to take a break if that's okay with you. It's going to have to be short, so if you need to hit the men's room, ladies' room, please do so. 10 minutes and we're back. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Tried to go to your one day. And we were there, and they said, no, okay, so that's okay. Then we called home. It's just, you know, I get so, I want to fight somebody. How do I want to beat the shit out of somebody? No, it's just, you know, you're also very emotional and you're very committed to this. And it's not money. I know that. I know that, yeah. Good man. You're a good guy. It's sad, it's really sad, how it's so rampant. You know, this industry is crazy.
Sam Williamson spoke with Martin.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. I'm a little rambly because it's so much fun. Try to mute pictures, you know. Yeah, thanks. It's amateur hour, but you know. Thank you. I'm glad you are. Thank you.
Hi, I want to introduce myself. I'm Nora, and we've been texting.
Oh, Nora, how do you do? Yeah. Good to see you. To come. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did I catch your attention at all?
Yes, definitely. And we're trying to do a segment on it tonight, and we'll have a panel for here. I don't know what time we're finished.
Well, we have to go to. We agreed to go to News Nation.
Yeah, we're part of the News Nation.
All right, so we're going there
Oh, you're going there? Okay.
to PIX.
Yep.
Yeah.
For Banfield.
I guess Banfield. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
All right.
No. Yes, Banfield.
For
Yeah.
Banfield. Okay. All right.
So
Okay. Yeah. We're gonna have a crew here like at 7:30. So if you wanted to do that, and then we can head to the studio.
Okay.
I'll probably be heading there too, actually. So.
Great.
But yeah, I'll touch
Okay.
base with you.
Thank you.
after, but yeah,
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Back. Go back.
I believe a few people are still up.
All right, we'll get this started. Okay. We're moving into an area that's outside of Shannan, Gilbert, and the other victims that we know of. And we're moving over to a very interesting new development in respect to Rex Shorten and his case. So, this is the first time what I'm about to raise has been addressed anywhere. And, so I don't think anybody's brought it up before, anywhere, except on the district attorney's papers filed in the bail application against Corrigan. So follow me very carefully. It's a little tricky and a little detailed, but I think you'll understand. when the district attorney, makes an application on bail in a murder case, they try to have the charged person, the defendant, they try to have him remanded, meaning no bail. And of course, in our country, bail is a concept that applies to everybody. It's pretty liberally construed by judges to allow it. It's rare to get a remand. So for the DA to get that remand, the DA has to work very hard. And so the district attorney did so in this case. On the first bail application, it dealt with, the DA's application dealt with the deaths of Megan Morgan, Amber Costello, and Melissa Bartholomew. And the DA was successful in that application, and Morgan was remanded. But recently, when he was charged with the death of Maureen Brady Barnes, the application had to be made all over again. And it was. And it was also successful. And it was successful because amongst the things that the DA said, he said the following. Now, mind you, Mr. Tierney, in my estimation, is a very good lawyer. I've known him well. He and I worked together when he was in the United States Attorney's Office on prosecuting a corrupt lawyer named Vincent J. Trimarco Jr. And I was the one who did the investigation on that case to help a little girl from whom Trimarco stole $1.2 million. And it was Ray who worked with me to get that prosecution done. We're friends. I have great regard for him and his work. Remember, he's the DA, so he's supported by a whole bunch of police officers who gathered up the information I'm about to read. Okay? On page 3 of the bail application, the district attorney said this. Records now establish that defendant Horriman's wife was also out of New York for the disappearance of Maureen Prager Barnes. Unquote. That's the DA's conclusion. I'm not sure why he even puts it in the bail application, because it wouldn't matter. As set forth in Exhibit A, travel and cellular telephone billing records had previously established that defendant Horriman's wife and children were out of the state during the disappearances and murders of 3 of the 4 victims, specifically Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Horriman, and Amber Costello. He makes that conclusion based on the first application. There are some real serious problems with that that conclusion from the first application, but tonight I'm dealing with this one in particular. They did an extensive search of defendant Horriman's house and the financial records. And he says, quote, while the review of these records is ongoing, among these records is an August 2007 Bank of America credit card statement. See embedded image on the following page. That's what you're looking at up there, which indicates a July 6, 2007 check-in to the flagship hotel located in Atlantic City, as well as transactions which are indicative of a stay in Atlantic City from July 6, 2007 through July 20th, 2007. In footnote, he says, the highlighted boxes, and you can see those boxes, have been added to the bank statement below for demonstration purposes. Red indicating a credit card charge for a stay at the flagship hotel, beginning on, key here now, July 6, 2007, and blue indicating a credit card charge for a stay at the Club Wyndham Skyline Tower, beginning on July 13, 2007. The handwriting was in the original. It was on there when they got the document.
hold the midsection of the leg. I think it died out on you.
Okay. Why is that? Bathroom.
I didn't know there's interference when you're holding it for the product.
I got it. Okay, thank you. All right. Next paragraph. Quote, based on post-arrest interviews with witnesses, including defendant Hoyerman's wife, Ms. Åsa Elber, the task force was able to corroborate that Ms. Elber and her two children stayed in Atlantic City, New Jersey from on or about July 6, 2007 through on or about July 20th, 2007. The trip began with defendant Hoyerman remaining in New York. Continuing. According to the investigation to date, Ms. Ellerup and her children checked into the flagship hotel on or about July 6, 2007. On or about July 13, 2007, defendant Hoyerman arrived in Atlantic City. On that date, defendant Hoyerman and his family checked into the Club Wyndham Skyline Tower in Atlantic City, New Jersey, see above, meaning that document. Consequently, Hoyerman's wife and children were indeed traveling out of state during the time of Maureen Granny Barnes' disappearance, which occurred on or about July 9th, 2007. You get the picture? July 6th, according to this document, they arrived at the flagship hotel, and they leave July 13th. The disappearance of Granny Barnes is July 9th, so they weren't there when Granny Barnes disappeared, according to this document. And according to, as the DA himself says, according to Åsa Elber, and the interview that was conducted with her. Quote, based on the foregoing, the murders of all four victims occurred at times when defendant Hoyerman's wife and children were traveling out of state, which allowed defendant Hoyerman unfettered time to execute his plans for each victim without any fear that his family would uncover or learn of his involvement in these crimes. Now, the district attorney is going far out of his way to make a point that has nothing to do with the bail application directly of Rex Hoyerman. Why is that? Because the people who prepared this for him wanted to say it. Then look at the chart. There's a chart on page 22 in the same application. If you don't have it, I'll just point it out to you. That on the buckle that was on the belt around Maureen Granny Barnes was a hair near the head of Åsa Elber. I'm sorry, on the buckle belt. Sorry, on the buckle belt was this hair of Åsa Elber. On Maggie Waterman, on the outside head area, was another hair of Åsa Elber. On the tape that was in the area of the head on Maggie Waterman was a hair of Åsa Elber. Also on Maggie Waterman was a hair in the bottom of the burlap of Rex Hoyerman. And on the area of the head of Amber Costello was a hair of Victoria Hoyerman, the daughter, who was at the time 14, or just about to be 14. Now, it seems to be just an American predilection. Children are sacred. Children, you use the word child, and automatically a certain sacredness descends over over the person. Spend some time with me in family court and see how many 14-year-olds commit serious heinous crimes. It's been said that, well, back in August of this year, I pointed out at a press conference, which I held, counter to Hoyerman's lawyer and the children's lawyer, I pointed out that they were having a press conference and asking for money for GoFundMe funds, and their client didn't show up. I held a counter press conference and I pointed out that Mrs. Hoyerman, Mrs. Elder, was certainly aware of the vast number of prostitutes, sex workers, whatever they were called by the police, who were servicing Rex Hoyerman in his house over the course of years, and she was well aware of it. And by that, she should have fallen into the circle of suspects in the case. Not that she was guilty, but she should have fallen into the circle of suspects and not exonerated like the district attorney had done and was doing in this application. I made that point. I took a lot of heat for doing that. A lot of tough people came down on me because I said that, and especially because it implicated possible children. So we come now to this. By the way, the district attorney in his application admitted that even in the last 2 years, Hoyerman had been soliciting hundreds and hundreds of sex workers just in the last 2 years in his cell phones that they found, many cell phones they were using, the throwaway phones. And his wife supposedly knows nothing about that, and his child who lives there in a 1,343 square foot house, which is like a mini bungalow, didn't notice it. That's absurd. Anyway, here we have an exoneration of them by the DA of the family based upon this record that you see up there that supposedly shows they were in Atlantic City. First thing to note, the 3 hotels that are mentioned up there, you'll notice there's another one called Tropicana, where there's what appears to be somewhat of a contradictory stay. Looking at the dates, all 3 of them are timeshares. I checked them out. We investigated. They're all 3 timeshares. They're not just ordinary hotels. People can come and go in the timeshares very easily. It's not like a hotel stay. Notice something else that's peculiar. I'm going to read it to you again and tell me what you think. The task force was able to corroborate that Mrs. Elder and her 2 children stayed in Atlantic City, New Jersey from on or about July 6, 2007 through on or about July 20th, 2007. If the district attorney is trying to establish that these people they had a completely 100% solid alibi for those periods of time, don't you think on or about is a very unusual phrase to use? That's a lawyer's phrase. To say it might have been July 6th, and then again it could be July 7th, it could be July 8th. What's on or about? What are those phrases doing twice in that application? The application should say on July 6th, such and such happened. On July 20th, such and such happened. Not on or about. About means that they're not sure. How does that then exonerate them? Remember something else before I hit the main point. I haven't got to the main point. Remember that Rex Norman is a torturer. And the DA says so repeatedly in this application, how he would look at all these horrible torture films and so on of women. And by the way, when you look at his, I digress, but when you look at his sites that he looked at, that are listed here, the sex sites that he looked at, the vast majority when they deal with children are all sites and that appear to be similar to his daughter. And the picture that they find in his basement is a picture that looks, a beat up woman that looks a lot like his daughter. Even describing blonde hair and some of the porn sites that they use and so forth. A point to be made. But back to the main point. On or about doesn't count. The torturers keep people alive so they can enjoy the torture, especially this guy, who had abilities to keep these bodies in all kinds of places, including in his basement, while they were still alive, or his storage units, where you could fit a whole unit inside a unit. His storage unit was so big. So when did these girls die? On or about July 9th. On or about July 9th, could be July 13th, could be July 6th. I don't know. Anyway, look now at those entries. And take a look at the flagship hotel entry. Notice the transaction date is July 14th. Bear with me. And the DA hangs his hat on this day. I called with witnesses the flagship hotel. And I spoke to the manager in the flagship hotel very recently. And the manager, who I befriended on the phone, looked up the stay of Mrs. Delaware at that hotel, and when her time that she was there. And she looked it up for us and read it to us twice. We made sure that she committed to what she said. She was able to tell us not only the name, Eleanor, she said, oh, Asa Eleanor, Asa, she called it. And she was able to tell us the amount of the charge was $37.45. She read it to us twice from the computer, and she said, yes, they stayed here from July 17th to July 23rd. July 17th to July 23rd. And she had no reason to lie to me or to make a mistake, and tried to make sure she told us the right thing by having her repeat. And she read it right off their computer. If that's true, if her records are correct, then the district attorney is not correct. And Eleanor was not there away on July 9th, July 8th, July 7th, July 6th, July 10th, all the way up to July 17th. She wasn't there in Atlantic City at that hotel. Now, the district attorney drew his information based on his own affidavit from this document that you see, and from Mrs. Eleanor herself, who confirmed it for you. if what this manager read to me was true, and this just happened, that's true, and Mrs. Eller, her children were not in Atlantic City when they claimed to be. Somebody lied to the district attorney. And nobody in his office checked it out. We were able to check it out. I'm a private person. Another thing, we're not sure about this part, I'll just put it in anyway. But if you notice, they showed an arrival date of July 6th. I asked her, what is that all about? She said, I never heard that being entered on a bill, and they did not arrive on July 6th, they arrived on July 17th. The same notation takes place for the Tropicana with an arrival date of July 19th, and the same indication for the Skyline Tower for arrival date of July 13th. That's called the 13th, yeah. Aside from the fact that there are inconsistent entries, did you ever see a bill that puts down those entry dates? Was that requested by the person ordering the service before they went to put down the arrival dates? In other words, these arrival dates don't mean anything. If the record read to me is a true record. Mrs. Elder and her daughter belong in the circle of suspicion. Very definitely. Their hairs, the district attorney speculates that these hairs may have fallen off the daughter and the wife onto Mr. Horgan and then fell on these bodies. Yeah, that's a nice guess, but it's a guess. But I'm not guessing at what I just told you. That's what was said to me on the record. I find it a little peculiar that the hairs are always found up on the head of the victims, except for the one that Horgan in the back and the belt. Why is that? Was there a touching of the head with another head? In those cases, that's a possibility. I'm not saying that's it, that's the case, but these things need to be considered. They are important. They belong in the circle of suspicions, especially because they told the DA a story that wouldn't match the record. That's my surprise. I think it's a pretty powerful one. When you look at the other examples of now with that in mind, you go back to the first application, you can see that there's some real weaknesses in that application as well. But I'm not tonight here to give you that. I'm just giving you what I found. But you can find it for yourselves as you look. The application is a very neat one, in fact. Is that the kind of work we expect from our police? The same police who have done the work on Shannan, Gilbert, Jessica Taylor? Now, there's much more that I can say, of course, about Rex Horgan, knowing what we know from the witnesses who've come forward to me and told me already, which the two witnesses who have given statements already, one of whom is here and is going to speak tonight, as to what she found with Horgan. But I also have other witnesses who've come forward, victims of Horgan, who the district attorney doesn't know about. And if you ask, well, why did you share it with them? I shared with the task force and the police department time and time again all my information to no avail. They don't even call me back. And so the public is going to hear it first. Now, these other people here, or they're not here, they've given us affidavits, and you're going to hear what they have to say, and I think you'll be in for a surprise. So now, with that, I'm going to move on to that portion of the program.
Since I am a professional nurse, I will go by first name basis only the brain.
Can't hear?
No,
Can't hear.
I'll turn her up.
A professional nurse?
Yes. I will repeat what I just said. Since I am a professional nurse, I will go by first name basis only the brain. To protect myself and my patient. My name is Lorraine, residing at a confidential address.
Can you hear her?
No.
Okay, this is not working.
Okay. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
I am Lorraine, residing at a confidential address, bringing duly sworn state as follows. As signed in affidavit, Mr. Ray. And he was nice enough to listen to me patiently. I am over 18 years of age. I reside in the state of New York. I am of sound mind and memory. I have come forward to state facts which I personally know to be true. I have stated these facts to John Ray, and in this affidavit, I have asked John Ray to prepare this affidavit to reflect my words and my knowledge. This affidavit contains my words and my knowledge. I have determined to come forward with facts within my knowledge because I wish the truth to be known about Rex and and others, including his wife Asa, and a woman I believe to have been Karen Vergara. I believe that great harm came to that woman. I believe to have been with Karen Vergara when she was at her mother's home in Massapequa Park, New York, in or around Valentine's Day in 1996.
Do you mind speaking up just a little bit?
Really can't hear you. Can you
Okay.
put the mic up?
It's all the way up, just so everybody knows.
I feel a heavy responsibility to her. That is why I contacted John Ray. I am a former swinger. I am 54 years old. A swinger is a person who partners with another person. Then that partnership has sex with other partners or groups of partners. I formed a partnership with an NYPD policeman in or around 1996. His name is known to me as Mr. Ray. I call him RW. He had been a police officer assigned in Prospect Park in Brooklyn. He became a detective. He was handsome. I loved him. We became partner members of a swinger club known as Trapeze. I believe it was in Lower Manhattan. Sex among partners there was common and encouraged, included on the premises. I believe that as many as 300 members and their partners could be there at any time. I and RW went to Trapeze several times and engaged in sex with other couples there several times. I saw others having sex there as well. Sex took place in rooms and a big room as well. Several members were police officers. Several members were from Long Island. Members were enabled to post messages and contact information on the wall. Either Rex Herman or his wife Asa posted contact information for them in a house in Massapequa Park to engage there in swinger sex in 1996. I and RW chose to go there to the Herman house in February 1996. RW picked up a woman I believe to be Karen Vergara in New York City. On the way to Herman's house, she was hungry and homeless. She sat in the back of the car. She leaned forward and to the right. When we stopped for gas, she said to me, "I'm scared." I said to her, "Don't be scared, my boyfriend is a police officer." She couldn't be safer than being with a cop. I told her to ask at the house when we arrived to take a shower and for food. We entered the Herman's house by walking around the side of it. It was in the night. Inside the house in Massapequa Park, it was dark. Karen went downstairs. I went upstairs. I stayed upstairs with Asa. My partner, who I believe was bisexual, kept disappearing. I believe he was elsewhere in the house having sex with Rex. I believe I had sex with Rex as well. I never went downstairs. Asa told me words to the effect that Rex brought her from her country and that everything she had, he'd given it to her. She told me that she was lucky he was rich. She said she was also afraid of Rex. I don't know if she was truthful. I don't think that I ever went downstairs. I went towards the back of the house, asking RW, "Where are you?" He came out from the back, what seemed like from a room. I also saw a Christmas tree on the main floor, yet it was long past Christmas. I wondered why there was still a Christmas tree up. I believe Arthur and I were there at the Hoyerman's home on or around Valentine's Day, Halloween and other such holidays. I also saw, I also saw 2 large seashells on a shelf in the house. I recall thinking that they were like shells from my country, where I grew up. Country known to me in the story, of course. I asked Asa if she had friends from my country. I don't remember what she replied. I had also asked Asa if she wished me to perform sex upon her, but she said no, that she didn't wish that. I thought it was because I was mad. I recall that Rex went outside and started a fire in what appeared to be a large barrel. Our donor wished to leave. I went with him to his car. We left from the back door. Our donor complained that he lost his belt. Which is also one of the reasons why I came forward. Because it is my opinion that Mr. Rex collects these belts to intimidate people and to let these police officers and other men feel like he has something with him. So I want my ex-boyfriend to know that we know that he took your belt. And he did it to other men too. He takes your belt. Well, I'm not afraid of him. He went back to the house to retrieve it. I saw the face of the woman I believe to be Karen up against the window at the house. She looked scared. I had a sense that she was calling for help. I told Arjun about this. The woman I believed to be Karen suddenly ran outside naked and ran about by the garage. Arjun had gone back to the back of the house to look for his belts. But he was then back in the car. Arjun told me not to worry about her, that she was okay. They were only playing a game. We left without her. I felt uneasy that we left without her. I saw her on TV recently, and a picture of Karen Vergara. I recognized her as the woman who Arjun and I brought to Hoyerman's home. I was shocked and deeply sorrowful for having left her behind at Hoyerman's house. I told John Ray of these things because I needed to speak with him so that Karen would not be left behind again.
There are several others. We're running low on time. So I'm going to one of those that she was coming and she was unable to arrive. And we call her Alice Poe, a pseudonym. Alice Poe is my pseudonym. I'm using a pseudonym for my safety I have given an affidavit containing my real identity to John Ray, along with this affidavit. I am over age 18, I reside in Nassau County, New York. I had graduated high school in 1994. I was living in a budget inn on Montauk Highway in Patchogue, Suffolk County, the year before I graduated from high school as a 16-year-old runaway. I had been in the sun several days before the incident I described in this affidavit. I was deeply sunburned, as I recall. 2 doors down from me lived a blonde woman with her baby. The blonde woman was a sex worker. We became friends. I had moved to a smaller room at the end of the motel. She had a child aged 7 or less. The child was clean. My room was very small. The sex worker would stand outside of my door with her daughter sitting on my bed, and we would talk. I walked with the woman to take her daughter to school. The woman asked me at that time to later hang out with her friends in her room at the motel. I agreed, but I didn't show up. About 1 to 2 days later, the blonde woman left the motel suddenly, leaving her child behind and not returning for about 24 hours. I was very worried. When she returned, she asked me to hang out with her friends at the Budget Inn on Friday night and day, and urged me to keep my word to show up. She did not mention why she left her daughter with me for so long or where she was. On Friday morning, she came to my room and asked me if I was still going to hang out that night. I said yes. She told me she was going to wash clothes at noon and asked me if I wanted to accompany her. I went to her room at noon. She said she was no longer going to the laundromat and asked me if I was really going to show up that night. She walked into her room and picked up the phone, which was on the bed, and I realized she was on a call. I began to walk back to my room. She yelled out the door, asking if I was sure I was coming that night. I agreed to go and did so. At about 7:30 p.m. that Friday, the blonde woman came to my room, and I accompanied her to the room where her friends were. I thought we were going to her room and inquired where we were going when we passed it. She said her daughter was in bed watching TV and we couldn't hang out there. The room where her friends were was not one of the motel's guest rooms. The room was L-shaped with 2 beds, no dresser, a little alcove-type TV, and a small white microwave oven in an odd position. The room was occupied by several men and a blonde girl. One white man with blonde hair sat in a chair and seemed to be wasted. The group was drinking beer. There was a short man who appeared to be the boyfriend of the blonde. There was another man with brown hair, an old man in a gray suit, and a shorter black man. And there was one other white man who was there. He was the life of the party, talking to everyone. He tried to convince me to get mad at my boyfriend, who was not there. This boisterous person was James Burke. I was told by someone at the party that he was a cop, and that another one of the men was a cop. I had seen pictures of James Burke when he was a cop. I could identify him from those pictures. I am certain that this talkative man at the party was James Burke. James Burke was not smoking crack at this party, but shared crack with others in that room. He had the crack in a pipe. He was giving hits from the pipe to the others in the room. In case you don't think he enjoyed crack, he had a girlfriend named Loretta Rickenbacker from Massapequa, and African American lady, and I became her lawyer, so I know firsthand, what she said. And she just passed away in December. She would go with Burke, and they would smoke crack in a house in Waukandama, and it was a house that he ran other sex workers out of with another girl who had a sex business using that house. So he was into crack. Back to this. The old white man and black man did not take any hits, nor did I. I noticed that the persons taking hits were lining up one behind the other in front of Burke, whereupon he would give a hit of the pipe to each of them in turn, as if in a ritual. I did not get on the line. Burke approached me as I sat on the bed. He put the pipe in my face and lit it, saying, "Come on, come on." When I refused it, his persuasive personality suddenly changed. He became hostile and urged, "Come on." He wore a dark, short-sleeved shirt tucked into his pants with a gold chain. on his neck. I did not take a hit. The short white man, who appeared to have been the boyfriend of the blonde, left but came back. When he came back, he opened the door, began to walk inside the room with a large man behind him. Burke saw them at the door, whereupon Burke expressed anger by making a sound. He quickly took the other men, except the black man and the older white man, to the door, whereupon the large man and the short white man stepped back outside. All the men stood by the door and began to whisper to one another. Then the short white man came inside the room, leaving the large man outside, and closed the door. I could see the owner of the motel standing outside before the door closed. The men went into the alcove, where they whispered to each other, and then took out money from their wallets. The other men handed their money to the short white man. They all went out the door and left the room, leaving the door open. I went outside. It was almost dark. The men were gathered by a fancy car for about 15 minutes. The short white man and his girlfriend stood in the corner of the motel talking. We went back into the room. The short white man and his girlfriend did not come back into the room. I was anxious because I was the only woman in the room. I decided to go look for the woman and began to walk towards the door. Burke and the white man with the brown hair passed his ears, quickly ran to the door and blocked it. They asked me where I was going. I said I was going to look for a woman. They said that she was fine and had gone back to her room. I expressed concern about her daughter being in the room. Burke and other men began to laugh. Burke told me to leave the woman alone. I went back to the bed. The wasted white man was in front of me, sitting back into the chair, and appeared to be sleeping. Burke stood over the man and tapped his arm. The man didn't move. He spoke incoherently. Burke told him to get up. Burke then raised his voice and cursed at the man to get up. When the man still didn't get up, Burke grabbed the man's arm. He got up. That man with the brown hair and Burke walked towards the alcove area. I saw the black man standing, and he gave me a very compassionate look. I began to feel frightened and tried to think of a way to get out of the room that wouldn't appear like I was attempting to leave permanently. I approached the man with the brown hair, asked for a cigarette, and if he would come outside with me smoking. I planned to tell him I was going to go to my room for cigarettes once outside. He agreed, and we went outside. When we went outside, the large man was there, leaning against the motel wall, in such a way that his legs were at a 45-degree angle, his back against the wall. I therefore could not yet see how big he was, and it was dark in this area where there was not a motel guest room. He wore a flannel shirt. He was pleasant to me. He seemed nerdy to me. I had begun to relax. After a few minutes, the other man went back into the room. The men seemed so different to me, so I thought some of them were from out of town and met at the motel. I asked the man where he was from. He told me they were friends from Long Island and liked to party. He told me that when they wanted to hang out, the men would tell their wives that they had taken a trip for business purposes. He said he wasn't married anymore. He said he owned the car dealership. I made a light, sarcastic joke that a dealer should not need to go on any business trip. He did not laugh. His demeanor changed. He said words to the effect that he was going on a business trip to Arizona the next week to pick up a car. He began to look at me like he was angry. I told him I was going to my room to get my cigarettes and began to walk past him. He quickly stood up from his leaning position and encircled me with his arm, urging me toward the door of the motel. He was now standing right up at him. I could see that he was huge. I exclaimed that, my God, he was tall. I could see that he was pleased at my shot. I tried to joke, but he remained serious. I did not want to go back in that room. I backed up from the door, noticed the car the men were interested in earlier parked close by. I faked interest in the car, asked it to show it to me. When he brought me to the car, we were in the light and I could see it clearly. His size, face, demeanor, and attitude deeply scared me. He no longer spoke nicely to me. I told him if he would wait, I just needed to get my cigarettes. I told him I was scared because my room was far in a dark area of the motel. I asked him to watch me and wait for me to keep him from suspecting I was trying to get away. So he let me go. She then talks about how she felt when she got back. She said scared and weak. She was sweating profusely, and she is certain that the huge man was Rex Gilbert. When I saw him on TV after he was arrested, I immediately recognized him as the man I had described above. I'm giving this affidavit to John Ray because I trust him. I do not trust the Suffolk County Police. And then she goes on about that. All right?
I'm giving this affidavit of my own free will because I am concerned about the victims of Rex Hurley, and I desire to state the truth as to what he did to me. I contacted John Ray about this incident. I am aware that John Ray has drafted the words in this affidavit at my request. I have stated to John Ray the events that are set forth in this affidavit accurately reflect my knowledge and information. I adopt the words in this affidavit as my own words. This event occurred on or around October 6, 2010. At the time, I was 18 years old. I worked at Gold Club in Center City of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, selling liquor shots as a shop girl. There, I was approached by a man. The man was about 5'7", 5'8", with thin brown hair. The man gave me bucks of cocaine and proceeded to invite me to his place, where he said I would find more cocaine and have the opportunity to make a large sum of money. I was addicted to cocaine at the time and took him up on the offer without hesitation. We went from the club to the high-rise apartment or minute suite long-term stay. Once we settled into his place, he produced more cocaine and told me that his friend John was coming over. He told me that I was to hang out with John for a few hours, sell him an 8-ball, and in return, I would make a large sum of money. He gave me 2 8-balls, one to indulge in while hanging out with John and one to sell it to John. Before John arrived, the man handed me a large taser about 7 inches long with 2 prongs and a soft case and told me to put it in my purse. Then John arrived. John was huge. He was quite tall and lumbering, towering over both of us. He appeared to have been in his 40s or so age. He had beady blue eyes, shortish but thick hair. I remember him especially because his features I have described were remarkable and unusual. I have since that time observed Rex Hurley over the summer on Google News in the form of his mugshot. I am certain that this huge man who was called John, who I met that day in 2010, was Rex Hurley. When I saw Rex Hurley on Google News, I had a visceral reaction. I became panicked, distressed, and wept hysterically because I was quite certain that Rex Hurley was John. John and I left the high-rise around dawn and hailed a taxi. I recall him making disparaging sexual remarks about a woman smoking outside of a legal office as we drove through Center City. We drove over the Benjamin Franklin Bridge into Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and pulled into the Feathernest Inn, which shares a parking lot with a hillside inn, which is now referred to as the Express Inn. I waited in the taxi while John spoke with reception. He came out and instructed the driver to go into Express Inn's reception area. He presumably booked a room while I waited in the taxi. The room we entered was on the second floor, a walk-up. It had a TV unit, a bathroom to the left, and a bed and window next to the door. John instructed me to put out cocaine on the bathroom countertop. He laid on the bed. I tried to keep conversation going so that I could avoid sex with him. We did not have sex. I was half naked, walking frequently around the room, talking to avoid his touch. Also, we were indulging in the cocaine. John instructed me to tell him about my young friends. He asked me who my youngest friends were, specifically their names and ages. He went into pedophilic fantasies about young girls and boys. After what seemed a few hours, he rose up in a frenzy and said that we had to leave immediately. He called a cab. We went to a drive-through ATM or teller at the bank. John withdrew $1,500. He instructed the driver to go to an address in a townhouse or apartment complex. The complex was fairly large and had a long entryway. We went in through the front door. There was no furniture in the house, which was very startling to me. He walked through the unit, down a small corridor with stairs and doors to the right and common spaces to the left, before arriving to the kitchen. Across from the dining kitchen area was a living room. In the living room was a milk crate, upon which was a TV with 2 beach chairs in front of it. On the TV was a foreign DVD menu screen, which had been on before we arrived. I still had not been paid any money from him. He told me to break out lines of cocaine in the kitchen while he had to go upstairs briefly, and that he would be back with the money. I did as requested. Then I heard a human-sized scurrying of some kind. I'm not sure if the noise came from the sub-level, the level I was on, or from upstairs, but from where I was standing, it didn't sound like it came from upstairs. I freaked out. I grabbed my bag, took out the taser, and ran to the front door. He barreled down the stairs and blocked the door with his hands spread, the money in one hand. I held the taser to his neck. I yelled repeatedly, "Get out of my way, give me the money." Eventually, he did so. I ran out the door, walking up the long road with tree-lined sidewalk through the complex to a gas station on the main road. I called a cab from there. The same cab he responded that had dropped us off, telling me that he was happy that I was safe and okay, and that he smelled something nefarious was going on. He drove me to a Paco station roughly 10 minutes away. I went home. I never went back to the Gold Club out of fear. I lived with my mother back then. She had been worried about my recent behavior and transferred my cell number to her own cell. One night shortly after the Friday event, John texted that number, saying words to the effect, "I'm looking for what we did last time," or something in form of a cryptic statement. My mother immediately called that number, asking the responders words to the effect that, "Hello, who is this?" A man responded by asking, "Taylor?" I do not know what else was said. I did not hear from John again. I'm giving this affidavit to John Ray because I trust him. I do not trust the Suffolk County Police Department. I provide this affidavit because I believe that the truth, which I know can help the cases of the victims of the Long Island serial killer. I am not under the influence of drugs, alcohol, or any other mind-altering substances. I openly, knowingly, and voluntarily sign this affidavit. I am not under the coercion, overreaching, or influence of anyone, including John Ray, in signing this affidavit. I have read this affidavit in its entirety and swear that the statements in it are true.
A very short time. There are others. I think we've got time to do them all, so here's what we're going to do. Let me just give you a real taste. We've got about 5 minutes, I think. The Mary Poe is a resident of New York County. I'll just read you the key paragraphs. She was a sex worker in 1994. On Sunday, August 22nd, 1994, a customer pulled up next to me and on 24th Street, 11th Avenue. She identifies the truck he drove. His driver's window was down. She agreed to give him oral sex. He told her to get in. She got in. He asked where we should go. I pointed up the street. He moved the vehicle toward 10th Avenue. He asked, "How do you like your work?" I said, "I love my job." I turned away just as I heard a loud explosion. Okay. I heard a loud explosion from my left side. It smelled of gunpowder. I was stunned. I felt a stinging in the back of my neck. Okay. I grabbed his hand. He was pointing the gun at me. They had a wrestling match. The gun was recovered by the detective, and the bullet was identified. The gun fell out the window while she was wrestling. She was screaming, and she got out the window herself. And she turned over. She ended up going to the hospital in an ambulance. We've confirmed the police report number from New York County for this particular incident. She says the driver wore a large flannel shirt, dark t-shirt underneath it. He was enormous size, very fat, huge gut, dark curly wavy hair. He was later told by a detective that he might have been trying to disguise himself. His brown face was unusually wide, thick, fierce blue eyes. His face was full of observable hatred. It was Rex Uerman. She saw him on TV. She recognized him immediately. We have 3 other cases where Uerman was involved with women and guns, and having a gun. So this is not out of the ordinary. There is another lady who couldn't come because she's in Virginia. She's doing jogging in a woods, and Uerman is following her in the woods. She identifies him very clearly. He basically chases her a little bit. She runs away. She's a fast runner, gets away. She never goes back. She quits running track. She's scared stiff because of him. And she gives me an affidavit as well. We'll post these on the bibliography so you can see them. So let me finish it up, wrap it up. I'm dropping my name, sorry. To round it off,
hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in a while. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.